I was on a military expedition beyond Antarctica. The edge we found proved everything was a lie. Before I tell you what I saw at the edge of Antarctica, I need you to do something for me. Right now, before you go any further, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. Your bedroom, your car, at work with headphones on, wherever you are. Just let me know, because there's a very real chance this video disappears within 24 hours. There's a very real chance I disappear within 24 hours. And if that happens, I need to know that at least one person out there heard this story before they erased it. Before they erased me. I'm not being paranoid. I'm not being dramatic. 2 members of my team are already dead, both in the last 18 months. Both ruled accidents. Both men who were in perfect health, expert operators who knew how to survive anything. And both saw exactly what I saw beyond that ice wall. So please just drop a comment. Let me know you were here. Let me know someone listened. Because what I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about the world we live in. And they will do anything to keep you from hearing it. My name is Captain Derek Sullivan, United States Navy, retired. I say retired, but that's not quite accurate. I was forced out. Honorably discharged with full benefits and a very generous pension that comes with one condition. I keep my mouth shut about what happened in Antarctica in December 2019. For 3 years, I've kept that promise. I've taken their money. I've lived under their surveillance. I've watched them follow me, tap my phones, monitor my internet. I've stayed silent while they killed my friends and made it look like accidents. But I can't do it anymore. I can't live with this lie. I can't go to my grave knowing that humanity is being deceived on a scale so massive, so fundamental, that it makes every other conspiracy theory look like child's play. So yeah, I'm breaking my NDA. I'm violating my security clearance. I'm committing what they'll call treason. And I'm doing it because you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know what's really at the bottom of the world. Or maybe I should say, what's really at the edge of the world. It started on November 22nd, 2019. I was home in San Diego, 3 weeks into a rare 2-month leave after a deployment in the Arctic Circle. I was finally starting to feel human again, sleeping past 0600, drinking beer on my balcony, living like a normal person for once in my 12-year career. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. The voice on the other end didn't introduce himself. No name, no rank, no identification. Just a cold, professional tone that made every instinct in my body go on alert. Captain Sullivan, you are to report to Naval Base Coronado, Building 147, at 0400 hours tomorrow morning. Come alone. Bring nothing. Tell no one. This conversation never happened. Then the line went dead. No chance to ask questions. No explanation. No confirmation that I'd comply. Just the assumption that I would. And here's what made my blood run cold. Building 147 doesn't officially exist. I've been stationed at Coronado on and off for years. I know that base like the back of my hand. There is no Building 147 on any map, any directory, any official document, which meant this wasn't a normal assignment. This was something else entirely. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I lay in bed running through possibilities, trying to figure out what kind of operation would require this level of secrecy. Black ops? Intelligence gathering? Assassination? I'd done classified work before, plenty of it, but I'd always known at least the basic parameters before showing up. This was different. This felt wrong. Around 200 hours, I got up to get some water and looked out my window. There was a black SUV parked across the street that hadn't been there when I went to bed. Tinted windows, engine off, nobody getting out, just sitting there, watching, making sure I knew they were watching, making sure I understood that refusing wasn't an option. I thought about running. I actually considered it for about 10 minutes, just grabbing my go bag, getting in my truck and driving until I hit the Canadian border. But I didn't. You know why? Because once you've served for as long as I have, once you've sworn that oath, once you've built your entire identity around being a soldier, you can't just walk away. Even when every instinct is screaming at you to run, even when you know deep in your gut that whatever you're walking into might destroy you. So at 03:30 hours, I got dressed, got in my truck, and drove to Coronado. The black SUV didn't follow me. It didn't need to. They already knew I'd go. Building 147 turned out to be a warehouse-style structure at the very edge of the base, right up against the perimeter fence, hidden behind a row of abandoned storage containers. No signs, no lights, except one single floodlight above a rusted metal door. I parked and walked toward the entrance, my boots crunching on gravel, my breath visible in the cold November air. The door opened before I could knock. A man in civilian clothes, maybe late 40s, military bearing, cold eyes, gestured for me to enter without saying a word. Inside, 7 other men were already waiting. I recognized 3 of them immediately. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, Navy SEAL, one of the best operators I'd ever worked with. We'd run Arctic operations together 2 years prior. Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, Marine Force Recon, tough as nails, the kind of guy who could survive a week in the desert with nothing but a knife and a prayer. And Chief Petty Officer James Webb, another SEAL, older, experienced, the type who'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by anything. The other 4 I didn't know, but I could read them easily enough. Special operations, different branches, different specialties, but all cut from the same cloth. All men who knew how to operate in extreme environments. All men who knew how to keep secrets. We stood there in that empty warehouse for maybe 10 minutes, nobody speaking, all of us sizing each other up and wondering what the hell we'd been pulled into. Then a side door opened and 2 men walked in. The first was a Navy commander I'd never seen before, wearing a standard uniform but no name tag, no unit insignia, nothing that would identify him. The second was someone I definitely wasn't expecting, a civilian, late 50s, expensive winter coat that looked out of place, wire-rimmed glasses, the nervous energy of someone who spent more time in boardrooms than briefing rooms. The commander looked at us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not hostility, not concern, something closer to resignation. Like he'd been ordered to do something he didn't agree with but couldn't refuse. He cleared his throat and spoke in a flat, emotionless tone. "Gentlemen, you've been selected for a classified security operation in Antarctica. Duration, approximately 3 weeks. Objective, patrol and maintain the integrity of the Antarctic barrier perimeter. You will be briefed in full once we're wheels up. You are not to contact anyone before departure. No phones, no emails, no goodbyes. As of this moment, you are under a communications blackout. Officially, you don't exist for the next month." He paused, and his jaw tightened before he continued. "I'm required to tell you that this operation carries significant risk, not from enemy combatants, not from environmental hazards, but from information exposure. Some of what you'll see cannot be unseen. Some of what you'll learn cannot be unlearned. If any of you want to walk out that door right now, you can. No questions, no consequences. But once you get on that plane, there's no turning back." Nobody moved. Not because we were brave or curious or patriotic. We didn't move because we all knew that if we walked out that door, we'd spend the rest of our lives wondering what was in Antarctica that required this level of secrecy. What was at the barrier perimeter that needed armed military patrols? Why were we being warned about information exposure instead of combat or weather? The commander nodded slowly, like he'd expected as much, maybe even hoped someone would have the sense to leave. Then he stepped aside and gestured to the civilian, who came forward looking like he was about to confess to a murder. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost apologetic, and I had to strain to hear him. "My name is Dr. Richard Vasquez. I'm a geographer with the U.S. Geological Survey. What I'm about to tell you is classified at a level above top secret. It's been hidden from the public since the Antarctic Treaty was signed in 1959. Gentlemen, the reason Antarctica is the most restricted continent on Earth, the reason civilians can't freely explore it, the reason every government on the planet cooperates to control access to it, is because Antarctica isn't what you've been told it is. It's not a continent at the bottom of a globe. It's a barrier, a perimeter, a wall of ice that encircles the known world. And your job is to make sure nobody gets close enough to see what's really there." The room went completely silent. I looked around at the other guys and saw my own confusion reflected in their faces. What the hell was this man talking about? A wall that encircles the world? That was flat earth conspiracy theory nonsense. That was crazy internet rabbit hole stuff. But Dr. Vasquez wasn't smiling. The commander wasn't dismissing it as a joke. They were dead serious. And that's when I realized that whatever we were about to see in Antarctica, it was going to shatter everything we thought we knew about reality. We were loaded onto a C-130 cargo plane within the hour. No fanfare, no ceremony. Just 8 confused and increasingly disturbed military operators being flown toward the bottom of the world to guard something that supposedly shouldn't exist. As we lifted off into the dark California morning, I looked out the small window and watched the lights of San Diego disappear below. I had no idea then that I was watching my old life vanish, that the man who got on that plane wouldn't really come back. Because what we found at the Antarctic barrier, What we saw beyond that ice didn't just challenge what I believed about geography or science. It proved that humanity has been lied to on a scale so massive, so all-encompassing, that every government, every space agency, every educational institution is complicit in the greatest deception in human history. And if you're still listening, if you made it this far, then you need to hear what happened next. You need to know what they're hiding. You need to understand that the world beneath your feet isn't what they told you it was. And once you know the truth, you can never go back to believing the lie. If you're back for part 2, thank you. Seriously. Drop a comment and let me know you're still here. I need to know this is getting out there. Now, where did I leave off? Right. That C-130 cargo plane carrying 8 confused operators toward Antarctica and toward the truth that would destroy everything we thought we knew about the world. The flight was long, brutally long. 16 hours with one refueling stop in Christchurch, New Zealand. But here's what made it disturbing. What made every operator on that plane start questioning what we'd gotten ourselves into. We weren't allowed to talk about the mission at all.
We had 2 handlers on the flight, Air Force Special Operations types who made it crystal clear that discussion of the briefing, speculation about our objectives, or even casual conversation about Antarctica was prohibited until we reached our destination. Now, I've been on dozens of classified missions. I've transported nuclear materials. I've run ops in countries that officially we weren't in. I've done things that will never appear in any public record.
But I've never, not once, been ordered to maintain complete silence with my own team during transport. That's not how special operations work. You talk, you plan, you build rapport, you establish trust. This enforced silence did the opposite. It made us paranoid. It made us isolated. It made us wonder if we could even trust each other. And I think that was the point. They wanted us off balance before we even arrived. I spent most of that flight studying the other men and thinking about what Dr. Vasquez had said. A barrier that encircles the world. It sounded insane. It sounded like something from a flat Earth YouTube video. The kind of stuff I'd always dismissed as crazy conspiracy theory nonsense. But Dr. Vasquez wasn't some internet crackpot. He was a government geographer with high-level clearance. The commander wasn't joking around. This was an official military operation with real resources, real funding, real secrecy. Which meant either I'd stumbled into the most elaborate prank in military history, or something genuinely impossible was waiting for us in Antarctica. I looked at Chen across the cargo bay. He was staring at nothing, jaw clenched, clearly running through the same thoughts I was. Webb, the older SEAL, had his eyes closed, but I could tell he wasn't sleeping. His fingers were tapping a rhythm on his knee, a nervous tell I'd noticed before when he was processing something that didn't make sense. Rodriguez sat with his arms crossed, face unreadable, but I could see tension in his shoulders. We were all feeling it, that primal unease that comes when reality starts behaving in ways it shouldn't. When the world stops following the rules you thought were absolute. We landed at McMurdo Station at 0730 hours local time, and immediately something felt off. McMurdo is the largest research station in Antarctica, usually bustling with scientists, support staff, researchers from a dozen countries. It's loud, crowded, almost like a small town. But when we landed, the base was almost empty. We were shuttled directly from the airfield to an isolated building at the far edge of the facility, a prefab structure that looked newer than everything around it. No interaction with regular base personnel, no check-in procedures, no welcome briefing, just straight into what was clearly a compartmentalized black site within an existing facility. Inside, Commander Pierce was waiting for us. That's what he finally told us his name was. Commander Daniel Pierce, though I'd bet money that wasn't his real name. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept well in weeks. And when he started the briefing, his voice had that flat, resigned quality of someone who'd given this speech before and hated every word of it. Gentlemen, welcome to Antarctica. You're here for one purpose: perimeter security. The Antarctic barrier must be protected from unauthorized access at all costs. Your patrol sector is Zone 7, approximately 40 miles of the barrier perimeter. Your rules of engagement are simple. Anyone attempting to reach the barrier, anyone attempting to photograph the barrier, anyone attempting to cross or climb the barrier is to be detained immediately and transported to this facility for processing. Use of force is authorized. Lethal force if necessary. He paused, letting that sink in. Lethal force. Against who? Scientists? Explorers? Civilians? I raised my hand like we were in school. Sir, with respect, what exactly are we protecting? Dr. Vasquez mentioned the barrier is a perimeter wall, but a perimeter around what? And why would civilians be trying to reach it? Commander Pierce's jaw tightened. He didn't want to answer. I could see it in his eyes. But he'd been ordered to give us enough information to do our jobs, so he had no choice. Captain Sullivan, what you need to understand is that the official narrative about Antarctica, the one taught in schools, shown in documentaries, accepted by the general public, is incomplete. Antarctica is not a continent at the bottom of a spherical Earth. It's a ring, a circular barrier of ice and rock that surrounds the known land masses and oceans. What we call the Antarctic Circle on maps is actually the outer perimeter of the known world. Beyond the barrier is... He hesitated, and for the first time I saw genuine fear in his eyes. We don't know what's beyond the barrier. No one who's gone past it has ever come back with information we could verify. But what we do know is that if the general public discovers the true nature of Antarctica, if they understand that everything they've been taught about the shape of the world is a lie, it would cause global chaos, economic collapse, religious upheaval, social breakdown. Every government on Earth has agreed to maintain the deception, and you 8 men are now part of that conspiracy. You're here to make sure the truth stays hidden. The room was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Rodriguez was the first to speak, his voice low and dangerous. Sir, are you telling us that the Earth is flat? That every space agency, every satellite image, every pilot who's flown around the world is part of some massive conspiracy? Commander Pierce met his eyes without blinking. I'm telling you that the shape of the Earth is not what you've been told it is. I'm telling you that Antarctica is not where it appears on a globe. I'm telling you that there are aspects of our reality that have been hidden from humanity for reasons of global security and stability. And I'm telling you that your job isn't to understand it or believe it. Your job is to protect it. He pulled out a tablet and brought up images on the screen behind him. Satellite photos, but strange ones. The images showed Antarctica, but not as the frozen continent I'd seen in textbooks. Instead, it was a massive ring of ice, and in the center of the ring, I could see all the familiar continents: North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, all contained within a circle of ice, like a snow globe, like a terrarium, like a prison. These are the real satellite images, Pierce said quietly, classified since the 1960s. This is what Antarctica actually looks like from above. A barrier, and your job is to patrol Section 7 of that barrier and make damn sure nobody gets close enough to see what you're seeing right now. I felt sick, physically sick. My entire understanding of reality was crumbling in real time. If this was true, if this was real, then everything I'd ever learned was a lie. Every globe I'd ever seen, every map, every science class, every geography lesson, all of it carefully constructed deception. But why? Why would every government on Earth cooperate to hide something like this? What was the benefit? What were they protecting? Or more importantly, what were they protecting us from? Chen raised his hand. Sir, if Antarctica is a barrier, what's on the other side? What's beyond the ice? Pierce's face went hard. That's not your concern. Your concern is making sure nobody finds out. Your concern is patrol and detainment. Nothing more. But I pressed. With respect, Commander, if we're risking our lives out there, we deserve to know what we're protecting. What's beyond the barrier? Pierce stared at me for a long moment, and I saw a war happening behind his eyes. Orders versus conscience. Secrecy versus honesty. Finally, he said something that made my blood run cold. There are things beyond the barrier that the public cannot see. Not because they're dangerous, but because they would prove that humanity has been lied to on a fundamental level. There are structures beyond the barrier, lights, sounds, things that don't fit the official narrative of an empty frozen wasteland. And if people knew those things existed, if they understood what it meant, the entire social order would collapse overnight. So we guard the barrier. We've been guarding it since 1959. Hundreds of military personnel rotating through, decade after decade, all sworn to secrecy, all keeping the greatest secret in human history. And now you're part of that legacy. Congratulations. We were issued our equipment immediately after the briefing. Standard cold weather gear, weapons, survival supplies. But there was other equipment too. Equipment that didn't make sense for a simple patrol mission. High-powered cameras with telephoto lenses. Encrypted satellite phones with restricted contact lists. Portable signal jammers. GPS scramblers. And most disturbing, what looked like portable cell phone tower equipment. When I asked about it, one of the logistics guys explained that our job wasn't just to patrol the barrier, it was to create a dead zone. Any civilian who got close would lose all communications. Their phones would stop working, their GPS would fail, their cameras would malfunction due to electromagnetic interference. We were there to ensure that even if someone got close to the barrier, they wouldn't be able to document or share what they saw. We were the erasers, the cleaners, the men who made sure the truth never escaped. I looked at Chen as we loaded our packs. "You believe any of this?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Then, "I don't know what I believe anymore, but I know the US government doesn't deploy special operations teams and multi-million-dollar equipment to protect just ice. There's something out there, Sullivan. Something they're terrified of people seeing. And in 48 hours, we're going to see it ourselves." He was right. In 48 hours, we'd be at the barrier. We'd see with our own eyes whether everything we'd been told was true or just an elaborate mind game. But what I didn't know then, what none of us knew, was that seeing the barrier would only be the beginning. Because the real truth, the real secret, wasn't the shape of the Earth or the existence of the ice wall. The real secret was what we'd find beyond it when we decided to climb that wall and look at what they'd been hiding for over 60 years. And that secret would change everything. It would cost lives, it would destroy careers, and it would prove, beyond any shadow of doubt, that humanity has been living in a carefully constructed cage, and the guards of that cage were willing to kill to keep us from seeing the bars. Before I continue, I need to know you're still here. Comment below. Tell me you're listening. Because what I'm about to describe, the things we found during those first days of patrol, they're not just evidence of a conspiracy. They're proof that this conspiracy has been operating for decades. Proof that people have died trying to expose it. Proof that we weren't the first team sent to guard this secret, and we wouldn't be the last. The government has been protecting the Antarctic barrier for generations, and the evidence of that protection is scattered across the ice like breadcrumbs leading to the truth. We set out on patrol on our second day at McMurdo. 8 of us loaded into 2 modified snowcats, basically armored personnel carriers adapted for Antarctic conditions, equipped with everything we'd need for a 2-week patrol along what Commander Pierce called Section 7 of the perimeter. The ride out was tense. Nobody talked much. We were all processing what we'd been told, trying to reconcile it with everything we thought we knew about the world. The terrain was brutal, endless white, interrupted only by pressure ridges and ice formations, but nothing we hadn't trained for. For the first few hours, it felt like any other cold weather patrol. Routine, professional, normal. That feeling didn't last long. About 6 hours into the patrol, Rodriguez, who was driving the lead vehicle, suddenly stopped and pointed ahead. "You seeing that?" he asked over the radio. I looked through the windshield and saw what had caught his attention. A structure, maybe 200 yards ahead, partially buried in snow and ice. At first glance, it looked like a natural ice formation, but the angles were wrong, too geometric, too deliberate. We approached slowly, weapons ready, even though we had no idea what we were approaching. As we got closer, the truth became clear. It was a bunker, a military bunker, half buried in accumulated ice and snow, maybe 30 years old based on the weathering. But here's what made it disturbing. It wasn't on any of our maps, not on the official patrol route, not marked as a previous installation. It simply existed in a place where, according to our briefing materials, nothing had ever been built. We stopped the vehicles and got out to investigate. The entrance was partially blocked by ice, but we managed to clear it enough to get inside. The interior was frozen solid, everything covered in frost, but intact. It was definitely military, American military. I could see faded unit insignias on some of the equipment, dates stenciled on supply crates. This bunker had been occupied in the late 1980s, maybe early 1990s, and it had been occupied for the same reason we were here: barrier patrol. Inside the bunker, we found evidence of long-term habitation, sleeping quarters for maybe a dozen men, a radio room with equipment that was outdated but sophisticated for its time. And most importantly, we found logs, patrol logs, incident reports, all of it frozen, some of it barely legible, but enough to piece together a story. These men had been doing exactly what we were doing: patrolling the barrier, deterring explorers, maintaining the secret. One log entry, dated February 1991, caught my attention. It was written in hurried handwriting, almost frantic. "Third civilian aircraft this month. They're getting more persistent. Command says shoot to disable. not destroy. We're not supposed to create martyrs. But how long can we keep doing this? How long can we keep lying to people about what's out here? I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. These men had been struggling with the same questions we were. They'd been part of the same conspiracy, the same cover-up, the same moral nightmare. And based on the abandoned state of this bunker, either they'd been rotated out or something had happened to them. I took photos of the logs with my personal camera, against orders. I knew I shouldn't, but something told me this evidence mattered, that someday, someone would need to see proof that this conspiracy went back decades. We continued the patrol and found more structures. Not just one bunker, but several, scattered along the route at roughly 10-mile intervals. Some were older, dating back to what looked like the 1960s or 1970s. Some were newer, abandoned maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But all of them told the same story. Continuous military presence, continuous patrol, continuous cover-up. And interspersed with the old bunkers were new installations. Modern surveillance stations, sleek and high-tech, bristling with satellite dishes and camera equipment. These weren't manned. They were automated, remotely monitored, designed to detect anyone approaching the barrier long before they got close. Webb, who had some signals intelligence training, examined one of the stations and reported back with a disturbed expression. These things are monitoring everything. Satellite phones, GPS signals, even civilian radio frequencies. They're creating a detection grid that covers hundreds of miles. If anyone gets within 50 miles of this sector, command knows about it immediately. Chen looked at me with concern. This isn't a patrol mission. This is a containment operation. They've turned the entire Antarctic perimeter into a militarized zone. And we're just the latest guards. He was right. We weren't explorers or researchers. We were prison guards. And the prison was the entire known world. On the third day of patrol, we found something that changed everything. Rodriguez spotted it first. A dark shape protruding from a snowbank about half a mile off our route. At first we thought it was just an ice formation, maybe a rock outcropping. But as we approached, the shape resolved into something man-made, something that shouldn't have been there. It was an airplane, or what was left of one. A small civilian aircraft, maybe a Cessna or similar, nose down in the ice, tail section sticking up at an angle. The whole thing covered in decades of accumulated snow. We stopped the vehicles and approached on foot. The plane was old, really old. Based on the design and the faded registration numbers barely visible on the tail, I estimated it was from the early 1980s, maybe late 1970s. The windows were frost-covered and opaque, but I could see a shape inside. Rodriguez used his ice axe to carefully clear one of the windows, and that's when we saw the pilot, still in his seat, still strapped in, frozen solid for probably 40 years. His face was preserved by the cold, eyes closed, expression almost peaceful. He died on impact, or shortly after. But why was he here? Civilian aircraft aren't allowed in this region, never have been. The Antarctic Treaty prohibits unauthorized flights over most of the continent. This man had violated that prohibition, and he'd paid for it with his life. We managed to get the door open, breaking away ice that had sealed it shut for decades. The interior of the plane was like a time capsule, everything frozen exactly as it had been the moment the plane went down, and what we found inside made my blood run cold. The plane wasn't just a civilian aircraft on a joyride. It was an expedition plane, packed with equipment, professional cameras, including what looked like high-end film cameras from the era, weather monitoring equipment, navigation tools, and most importantly, notebooks and journals, lots of them. I carefully extracted one of the journals, the leather cover frozen stiff, and brought it outside where I could examine it in better light. The first few pages were routine flight logs and navigation notes, but then, about halfway through, the entries changed. They became more urgent, more desperate. One entry, dated December 18th, 1983, read, "We're close now. I can see it on the horizon. The barrier they've been hiding. It's real. It's actually real. Everything the researchers said, everything the leaked documents suggested, it's all true. Antarctica isn't a continent. It's a wall. And they don't want anyone to see it. 3 military aircraft have intercepted us today alone. They're not trying to force us down anymore. They're trying to shoot us down. But I'm going to get the photos. I'm going to get the proof. The world needs to know they've been lied to." I flipped to the last entry, my hands shaking despite my insulated gloves. The handwriting was rushed, almost illegible. "They hit our engine. We're going down. I can see the barrier clearly now. It's massive, hundreds of feet high. It extends forever in both directions. This isn't a natural formation. This was built, or it's something else entirely. The military planes are circling, making sure we don't survive this, but I don't care anymore. I saw it. I saw the edge. I saw the truth. They can kill me, but they can't erase what I witnessed. The Earth is not what they told us. We're living in a containment. We're living in a lie. God forgive me, I wish I'd never looked. I wish I'd never needed to know. That was the last entry. The next page was blank. This man had died knowing the truth, and his truth had died with him. Until now. I showed the journal to the rest of the team. We passed it around in silence, each of us reading those final, desperate words. Rodriguez was the first to speak. They shot him down. Our own government shot down a civilian aircraft to protect this secret, Webb added, his voice hollow. And they would have done it officially under the guise of protecting restricted airspace. His family probably thinks he died in a tragic accident. They have no idea he was murdered for getting too close to the truth. Chen looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Fear mixed with anger, mixed with something else. Betrayal. Sullivan, we need to talk about what we're really doing here, about what side we're on. That night, we made camp about 15 miles from where we'd found the plane. We set up the thermal tents in a defensive formation like we'd been trained, established a watch rotation, went through all the standard procedures, but nobody was thinking about procedure. We were all thinking about that frozen pilot and his journal, about the bunkers scattered across the ice, evidence of a decades-long cover-up, about the surveillance systems monitoring every approach to the barrier, about the fact that we were now part of that cover-up. We were the people who would shoot down the next curious pilot. We were the people who would detain the next explorer seeking truth. We were the guards of the lie. Around midnight, during my watch, Chen came out of his tent and sat next to me. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, "You know we're not going to be able to just walk away from this when our rotation is done. They're never going to let us leave with what we know." I'd been thinking the same thing. "So what do we do?" He stared out into the darkness, toward where the barrier supposedly stood, maybe 20 miles ahead of us on our patrol route. "I think we need to see it for ourselves. Not just patrol near it like they want, but actually see it. Get close. Touch it. Verify that what they're telling us is real. Because if it is real, if there really is a wall of ice that circles the world, then we need to decide what we're going to do with that knowledge. Are we going to be like those men in the bunkers, just following orders and keeping the secret? Or are we going to be like that pilot, willing to risk everything to expose the truth?" I thought about that for a long time. Then I made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow we go off route. We go to the barrier. We see it with our own eyes. And then we decide. If you're still watching, drop a comment right now. Let me know you're here. Because this is where everything changed for me. This is where I met someone who made me question which side of history I wanted to be on. Up until this point, I could tell myself I was just following orders, just doing my job, just a good soldier caught in a weird situation. But after what happened on day 4 of our patrol, after meeting the man who would change everything, I couldn't hide behind those excuses anymore. I had to make a choice, and that choice would cost me everything. It was around 1400 hours on day 4 when our detection equipment started going crazy. Webb was monitoring the surveillance feeds from the automated stations we'd passed, and suddenly every alarm was firing at once. "We've got movement," he called out. 4 individuals, approximately 8 miles northeast of our position, heading directly toward the barrier perimeter. They're on foot, pulling supply sleds, moving fast. Rodriguez looked at me. "Orders, Captain?" This was it. This was what we'd been sent here to do. Intercept unauthorized personnel, detain them, prevent them from reaching the barrier, protect the secret. I should have felt ready, prepared, but instead, I felt sick. Because I knew that whoever these people were, they were looking for the same truth we'd just started questioning, and we were about to stop them, maybe permanently. We loaded into the snowcats and headed toward the coordinates. The terrain was rough, lots of pressure ridges and crevasse fields that slowed us down, but we had vehicles, and they were on foot. We'd catch them easily. As we got closer, I could see them through my binoculars. 4 people, like Webb had said, dressed in heavy expedition gear, pulling 2 sleds loaded with equipment. They weren't running. They weren't trying to hide. They were just walking steadily toward the barrier, like they had every right to be there. Like they knew exactly what they were doing and didn't care who tried to stop them. We intercepted them about 6 miles from the barrier itself. Our snowcats came around both sides, boxing them in, and we dismounted with weapons ready, not pointed at them, but visible, a show of force, a warning. The 4 explorers stopped walking and stood there calmly, not showing fear or surprise, like they'd been expecting us. 3 men and 1 woman, all in their 40s or 50s, all with the weathered look of experienced outdoors people. But it was one of the men who immediately caught my attention, older than the others, maybe 50, with a gray beard and sharp, intelligent eyes that studied us with something like pity. He looked at each of us, taking our measure, then spoke in a calm, almost gentle voice. "You're the guardians, aren't you? The protectors of the lie." I stepped forward, trying to project authority I didn't feel. "Sir, this is a restricted area. You and your team need to come with us immediately. You're in violation of the Antarctic Treaty and multiple international laws." The man smiled, but it wasn't a mocking smile. It was sad, understanding, like a teacher watching a student struggle with a problem they hadn't figured out yet. "My name is Martin Kessler. These are my colleagues, Dr. Sarah Chen, a geographer, Robert Torres, a former Navy pilot, and James Wright, a documentary filmmaker. We've been planning this expedition for 3 years. We knew you'd be here. We knew you'd stop us, but we had to try anyway." I felt my grip tighten on my weapon. "Try what? What are you doing out here?" Martin looked past me, toward the horizon where the barrier supposedly stood. "We're here to see the edge, Captain. The edge of the world. The ice wall that your government and every other government has been hiding from humanity for over a century. We're here to photograph it, to document it, and to share that truth with the world. Because people deserve to know they've been lied to. They deserve to know what the Earth really looks like." Rodriguez moved up beside me, his voice hard. "You're talking about flat Earth conspiracy theory nonsense. You risked your lives to come out here for that?" Martin turned his attention to Rodriguez, and his expression didn't change. Still calm, still patient. "Is it nonsense, soldier? Then tell me, why are you here? Why does the most powerful military on Earth deploy armed special operations teams to patrol an empty stretch of Antarctic ice? Why is Antarctica the only continent on Earth where civilians cannot freely travel? Why is it that every single expedition to Antarctica, every research station, every scientific project requires explicit government approval? Why are there military installations scattered across the perimeter, some of them decades old, all monitoring approaches to the interior? I felt something cold settle in my stomach, and it wasn't the Antarctic wind. Martin was asking the same questions we'd been asking ourselves, the same questions that had kept me awake at night. He continued, his voice steady and reasonable. "If the Earth is a sphere, if Antarctica is just a frozen continent at the bottom of a globe, then there's no reason for this level of security, no reason for secrecy, no reason for armed guards patrolling ice formations. But if Antarctica is something else entirely, if it's a barrier that contains the oceans and defines the edge of habitable land, then suddenly all of this makes sense. The security, the restrictions, the lies. Because if people knew the truth about Antarctica, everything else falls apart. The entire model of reality that we've been taught crumbles, and you can't have that. You can't have billions of people suddenly questioning everything they've been told about the world." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he was crazy, that he'd wasted his time and risked his life for nothing. But the words wouldn't come, because everything he was saying made a horrible kind of sense. Webb stepped forward. "You said you've been planning this for 3 years. How did you even know about the barrier? This is all classified information." Martin reached slowly into his coat, making sure we could see his movements, not threatening. He pulled out a waterproof document case and opened it. Inside were papers, lots of them. "Leaked documents," he said, "from various sources over the years. Whistleblowers mostly. Military personnel who couldn't live with the lie anymore. Government scientists who grew a conscience. Some of these documents date back to the 1950s. Look at them. Read them. Then tell me I'm crazy." He handed me the case. I should have refused. I should have arrested him right then and secured the documents as evidence, but I didn't. I opened the case and started looking through the papers. They were old. Some were photocopies, but some looked like original documents yellowed with age. Internal memos from various government agencies, military patrol logs, satellite analysis reports, and maps. Dozens of maps, showing Antarctica not as a continent, but as a ring surrounding all other landmasses. One document caught my eye. It was stamped "Top Secret" and dated 1961. The header read, "Antarctic Perimeter Security Protocol, Revised." I read the first paragraph. Following the ratification of the Antarctic Treaty, all signatory nations agree to maintain continuous surveillance of the barrier perimeter. Any civilian attempts to reach or photograph the barrier are to be intercepted and detained. Use of lethal force is authorized if necessary to maintain operational security. The true nature of Antarctica must remain classified to prevent global social disruption. I felt the blood drain from my face. This was real. This document was real, and it proved that governments had been actively hiding the truth about Antarctica for over half a century. Chen, the SEAL on my team, was reading over my shoulder. I heard him whisper, "Oh my God. They've been doing this since 1961, maybe longer." Martin watched us process the information, his expression never changing, still patient, still calm. "You're starting to understand, aren't you? This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy fact. The largest, most successful cover-up in human history. Every government, every space agency, every educational institution, all working together to hide one simple truth. The Earth is not what they told you it is." I looked up at him, dozens of questions flooding my mind. But one came out first. Why? Why would every government on Earth cooperate to hide this? What's the benefit? Martin smiled again. That same sad smile. "Control, Captain. Think about it. If people knew that the Earth is a contained plane, that there's a barrier that defines the limits of the known world, what would they ask next? Who built the barrier? Or did it form naturally? If naturally, what's beyond it? If artificially, who has that kind of power? And most importantly, if we live in a contained system, are we being contained by something? Are we in a terrarium, a preserve, an experiment? Those questions threaten the entire power structure of modern civilization. Religion, science, government, economics, all of it is based on the assumption of an infinite universe with humanity as an insignificant speck on a random rock floating through space. But if we're not insignificant, if we're central, if we're contained for a purpose, then everything changes. Who's in control? Who knows the real truth? And why have they been lying to us? I realized I was trembling, not from cold, but from the implications of what he was saying. If he was right, if any of this was right, then my entire worldview was built on lies. Rodriguez spoke up, his voice uncertain now. "You said one of your team is a former Navy pilot, Torres, right?" He looked at the other man. "You must have flown over Antarctica. You must have seen it from the air. What did you see?" Robert Torres stepped forward. He was maybe 45, with the bearing of a military man even in civilian gear. "I flew reconnaissance missions over Antarctica in 2005 and 2006. Official missions, supporting research stations. But there were restricted zones. Areas where we were ordered never to fly, never to photograph, never to deviate from pre-approved flight paths. Those restrictions didn't make sense to me at the time. I thought it was just bureaucratic nonsense. But then I started noticing things. The way our navigation systems would glitch when we got close to certain areas. The way our altitude readings would become unreliable. And once, just once, I deviated from the flight path, just a few miles, just to see what was so damn important about those restricted zones." He paused, and I could see the memory playing across his face. I saw the barrier, from the air, a wall of ice that extended further than I could see in both directions. It wasn't on any of my maps. My co-pilot saw it too. We took photos. And when we landed, we were debriefed by intelligence officers who made it very clear that what we'd seen was classified, that we'd violated restricted airspace, and that if we ever spoke about it, we'd face court-martial and imprisonment. They took our photos. They took our flight data. They erased any evidence that we'd been there, and they threatened our families. So we stayed silent. For years, I stayed silent. But I can't anymore. I can't live knowing that humanity is being lied to on this scale. The woman, Dr. Sarah Chen, spoke for the first time. Her voice was steady, academic. "I'm a geographer. I've spent 20 years studying maps, analyzing satellite data, teaching students about the shape of the Earth. But about 5 years ago, I started noticing inconsistencies. Satellite images of Antarctica that didn't quite match up. Discrepancies in measurement data. Areas that were consistently blurred or obscured in publicly available imagery. I started asking questions, started digging deeper, and I found evidence that the official maps we use, the ones we teach to children, are deliberately distorted. Antarctica is not shown to scale. It's not shown in its true position. The entire southern region of standard maps is a projection, a mathematical construct that doesn't reflect physical reality. When you correct for the distortion, when you analyze the actual data, Antarctica becomes a ring, a perimeter, a boundary, and that changes everything. I looked at the four of them, these people who'd risked their lives, their careers, their freedom to come out here and see the truth, and I realized something that terrified me. They were right. Everything they were saying aligned with what we'd found. The bunkers, the logs, the surveillance equipment, the frozen pilot who'd been shot down for getting too close, the classified documents in Martin's case. It all pointed to one impossible conclusion. We'd been lied to about the fundamental shape of the world we lived on. Chen, my teammate, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Sullivan, what do we do? Orders say we detain them and bring them back to base. But if what they're saying is true..." I didn't answer immediately. I was thinking about that pilot in the frozen plane, about his last journal entry, about how he died knowing the truth, and how his truth had died with him, about the men in those old bunkers who'd spent years guarding this secret, following orders, keeping the lie alive, about Commander Pierce's words, "Your job isn't to understand it or believe it. Your job is to protect it." I'd been a soldier my entire adult life. I'd followed orders without question. I'd done things I wasn't proud of because I trusted that the people above me knew better than I did, that they were protecting something important, that there was a reason for the secrecy. But standing there on that frozen wasteland, looking at these four civilians who'd risked everything for truth, I realized that maybe I'd been on the wrong side all along. Maybe the people who deserved protection weren't the governments keeping secrets. Maybe they were the people trying to expose them. I made a decision that would change my life forever. I lowered my weapon. "We're going to the barrier," I said. "All of us. I need to see it with my own eyes, and then I'll decide what to do with you. If you're still with me, comment below. I need to know someone is hearing this, because this is where I crossed the line. This is where I went from being a soldier following orders to being something else entirely. A traitor, according to my government. A truth seeker, according to my conscience. Call it whatever you want. But this is the moment where everything changed, where I had to choose between the oath I'd sworn and the truth I'd discovered. I know what you're thinking. In part 4, I said we were all going to the barrier together, that I'd made the decision right there to take Martin and his team to see the truth. But that's not exactly what happened. See, the moment I lowered my weapon, Rodriguez stepped forward. "Sullivan, what the hell are you doing? We have orders. Clear direct orders. We detain unauthorized personnel and transport them back to base. We don't take them on field trips to see classified locations." He was right, of course. He was following protocol, doing exactly what we'd been trained to do. And I was about to throw all of that away based on what? Some documents that could be forgeries? Some compelling arguments from civilians who might be delusional conspiracy theorists? The reasonable part of my brain, the soldier part, was screaming at me to follow orders. But there was another part, a part that had been growing louder since we found that frozen pilot, that was screaming even louder. What if they're right? I looked at Rodriguez, then at the rest of my team. Webb looked conflicted. Thompson, our medic, looked uncomfortable. Jenkins and Carter were watching me with confusion, waiting for me to make sense of this. And Chen was looking at me with something I hadn't seen before. Hope that I'd make the right choice. But I didn't. Not then. I raised my weapon again. "You're right, Rodriguez. We follow orders." I turned to Martin and his team. "You're all under detention. We're transporting you back to McMurdo Station where you'll be processed and transferred to appropriate authorities. Secure their equipment, everything, documents, cameras, all of it." Martin didn't resist. None of them did. They just stood there with that same calm acceptance, like they'd known this would happen, like it was inevitable. As my team moved to restrain them and secure their gear, Martin caught my eye one last time. "You know we're right, Captain. You've seen the evidence. You've found the old bunkers, the surveillance equipment, probably even remains of previous civilians who got too close. You know this is real. The only question is whether you have the courage to act on that knowledge." Then he said something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. "There's a difference between following orders and doing what's right. I hope you figure out which one matters more before it's too late." We loaded Martin and his 3 companions into one of the snowcats, their hands zip-tied, their equipment confiscated and secured in the other vehicle. The ride back to our patrol camp was silent, except for the grinding of the engines and the howl of Antarctic wind. Nobody spoke. Not my team, not the prisoners. We were all processing what had just happened, what had been said, what it all meant. We reached our camp around 1900 hours and set up for the night. Standard procedure. Prisoners secured in one tent with 2 guards rotating watch. The rest of us in our own tents. Equipment locked down. Everything by the book. Everything proper and military and correct. And I felt like absolute shit. I lay in my sleeping bag that night, staring at the frost-covered ceiling of my tent, unable to sleep. Martin's words kept echoing in my head. The difference between following orders and doing what's right. I'd built my entire career on following orders. 12 years of unquestioning obedience to the chain of command. It had kept me alive, kept me sane, given me purpose and structure in a chaotic world. But what if the orders were wrong? What if the chain of command was protecting a lie so fundamental that it made everything else meaningless? I thought about that pilot again, about his journal, about how he died knowing he was right but unable to prove it to anyone. About how his family probably still thought he'd died in an accident, never knowing he'd been murdered for seeking truth. Was I going to be the person who pulled the trigger on the next truth seeker? Was I going to be the guard who kept humanity locked in ignorance? Around 0200 hours I heard movement outside my tent. Quiet, deliberate footsteps in the snow. I grabbed my sidearm and slowly unzipped the entrance. It was Chen. He saw my weapon and raised his hands. "Just me, Sullivan. Can we talk?" I holstered the gun and gestured for him to come in. He did, zipping the tent closed behind him, keeping his voice low. "I can't sleep," he said. "I keep thinking about what Martin said, about the documents, about that frozen pilot we found." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "What if he's right, Derek? What if everything we've been taught, everything we believe about the world, is wrong?" I'd been thinking the exact same thing, but hearing it out loud from Chen, from a SEAL, from one of the most rational and level-headed operators I knew, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me thinks this is all elaborate disinformation, maybe a test to see if we'll follow orders even when confronted with compelling contrary evidence. But another part of me, the part that's been bothering me since we found those old bunkers, thinks we're in the middle of something much bigger and much darker than we were told." Chen nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about the security measures, about why they're here. If Antarctica is just a frozen continent, if there's nothing special about it except research stations and penguins, then why the armed patrols? Why the surveillance grid? Why shoot down civilian aircraft?" I sat up in my sleeping bag. "You've been asking yourself the same questions I have." "We all have," Chen said. "I've talked to Webb and Thompson, not directly about the barrier theory, but about the mission, about why we're really here. None of it makes sense if the official story is true. But it makes perfect sense if Martin is right. If Antarctica is a perimeter, a boundary that they need to protect, then everything we've seen, everything we've been ordered to do, suddenly has a purpose. A dark purpose, but a purpose." I ran my hands through my hair, feeling the weight of the decision I was about to make. "What are you suggesting, Chen?" He met my eyes directly. "I'm suggesting we verify it ourselves. We're less than 6 miles from the barrier according to our maps. We could take one of the snowcats, leave the prisoners under guard with Rodriguez and the others, and go see it. Just see it. Take photos. Confirm whether it exists the way Martin claims. If it's just ice, just a natural formation, then we bring him and his team back to base. File our reports, and forget this ever happened. But if it's something else, if it's actually a massive wall that extends infinitely in both directions like he says, then we have to decide what we do with that information." It was mutiny. What Chen was suggesting was direct violation of orders. We were supposed to patrol the perimeter, not investigate it. We were supposed to prevent people from seeing the barrier, not go look at it ourselves. But he was right. We needed to know. I needed to know. "Who else knows you're here?" I asked. "Just you. I wanted to talk to you first, but I think Webb and Thompson would come with us if we asked. They're asking the same questions we are." I thought about it for a long moment, weighing the consequences. If we did this, if we went AWOL to investigate the barrier, we'd be ending our careers at minimum. At worst, we'd be court-martialed, possibly even charged with treason depending on what we found and what we did with that information. But if we didn't do it, if we just followed orders and brought Martin back to base, I knew I'd spend the rest of my life wondering if he'd been right, wondering if I'd been on the wrong side of the biggest secret in human history. "All right," I said finally. "Go wake Webb and Thompson. Tell them we're taking a snowcat out at first light for reconnaissance. Don't tell anyone else. Rodriguez and the others guard the prisoners and maintain camp. As far as they know, we're just doing a standard patrol sweep of the immediate area." Chen smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in days. "You're making the right choice, Derek." I wasn't sure about that. I wasn't sure about anything anymore, but I knew I couldn't live without knowing the truth. We waited until thorough 5:30 hours, that dead time before dawn when people are at their lowest alertness, when the watch rotation is getting tired, and the next shift hasn't woken up yet. Chen, Webb, Thompson, and I quietly loaded one of the snowcats with the bare minimum equipment: weapons, survival gear, and cameras. Real cameras, not the official surveillance equipment, personal devices that we could control. Before we left, I did something that could get me killed. I went to the tent where Martin and his team were secured. Rodriguez was on guard, and I told him I needed to question the prisoners privately. He didn't like it, but he stepped outside. I knelt down next to Martin, who was awake, had probably been awake all night. "The documents you had," I whispered. "The maps showing Antarctica as a ring. Did you bring copies?" He studied my face for a moment, then slowly nodded. "In the inside pocket of my coat, the waterproof one." "Why?" I didn't answer. I found the pocket, found the folded maps and documents, and tucked them inside my own jacket. "We're going to see it," I told him. "The barrier. We're going to verify what you said. If you're lying to me, if this is some elaborate game, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in a military prison. But if you're telling the truth," I trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. Martin finished it for me. "If I'm telling the truth, Captain, then you're about to see something that will change your life forever. Something that will make you question everything you've ever believed. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. You'll have to decide what kind of man you want to be, the kind who keeps the secret, or the kind who exposes it." The four of us left camp at 5:45 hours, driving northeast toward the coordinates where the barrier was supposed to be. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the ice in shades of orange and pink that would have been beautiful if I wasn't so terrified about what we were about to find. We drove in silence for about 30 minutes, each of us lost in our own thoughts. Then Webb, who was navigating, spoke up. "According to Martin's maps, we should be seeing it any minute now. It's supposed to be visible from about 3 miles out." I strained my eyes, looking at the horizon. At first, I saw nothing, just endless ice and sky. But then, as we crested a small ridge, I saw it, and my blood turned to ice. There, stretching across the entire horizon, impossibly massive and impossibly real, was the barrier. A wall of ice, easily 300 feet high, maybe more, extending as far as I could see in both directions. Perfectly vertical, perfectly smooth. Not a natural formation, not anything that should exist on Earth, but there it was. Real, undeniable. Proof that everything we'd been told about the world was a lie. Chen whispered what we were all thinking. Oh my God. He was right. Martin was right. About all of it. And that's when I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. That we'd crossed a line we could never uncross. That we'd seen something we could never unsee. And that whatever happened next, whatever consequences came from this decision, we were all in it together. We were about to become either heroes or traitors. And honestly, I still don't know which one we are. Before I continue, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to tell you, the documents we found, the evidence we uncovered, this is the stuff that gets people killed. This is the proof that the conspiracy goes back decades, maybe longer. This is what they've been hiding in abandoned bunkers scattered across the Antarctic ice, hoping nobody would ever find it. If this video disappears, if I disappear, you'll know why. So comment below right now. Let me know you're hearing this. Let me know someone will remember what I'm about to tell you. Because after seeing the barrier with our own eyes, after confirming that Martin was telling the truth, we made another decision. A decision that would take us even deeper into the rabbit hole. We decided to find more evidence, to document everything, to build a case so strong that even if they silenced us, the truth would eventually come out. We stood there for maybe 10 minutes, just staring at that impossible wall of ice stretching across the horizon. None of us spoke. What do you say when your entire understanding of reality has just been shattered? When you're looking at physical proof that humanity has been lied to for generations? Finally, Webb broke the silence. We need to document this. Photos, videos, measurements, everything. He was right. We'd seen it, but seeing wasn't enough. We needed evidence that others could verify, that couldn't be dismissed as hallucination or misidentification. We spent the next hour taking photographs from multiple angles, recording video, even using our military GPS units to log exact coordinates, despite knowing that this data would likely be confiscated the moment we returned to base. Thompson, our medic, had a personal camera he'd brought against regulations. He took dozens of high-resolution images, storing them on multiple memory cards. "I'm hiding these in different locations," he said. "In my gear, in the snowcat, even in my boots. They can't confiscate what they can't find all of." It was good thinking, but I had a better idea. An idea that had been forming since Martin had mentioned the old bunkers, since we'd found that first abandoned installation on day 1 of our patrol. "Those bunkers we passed," I said. "The abandoned ones from the 80s and 90s. If soldiers were stationed there for the same reason we're here, to guard the barrier, then they must have kept records, logs, documentation. Maybe even evidence of other civilians who got too close, other cover-ups, other incidents. If we can find those records, if we can prove this conspiracy has been operating for decades, it becomes much harder for them to dismiss or bury." Chen understood immediately. "You want to go back to those bunkers, search them properly, find whatever evidence is still there." I nodded. Martin had documents dating back to the 60s. He got them from whistleblowers, from people who couldn't live with the secret anymore. But what if there's more? What if those old installations are full of evidence that nobody bothered to destroy because they assumed nobody would ever look? Webb and Thompson exchanged glances, then nodded. This was it. This was the point of no return. We weren't just violating orders anymore. We were actively conducting an unauthorized investigation into classified government operations. This was career-ending at minimum, treason at maximum. But none of us cared anymore. We'd seen the wall, we knew the truth, and we needed to document it before they made us disappear like they'd made that pilot disappear, like they'd probably made countless others disappear over the decades. We drove back to camp, arriving around 800 hours. Rodriguez was waiting, arms crossed, clearly suspicious. "Where the hell have you been?" he demanded. "Standard patrol," I lied smoothly. "Checked the perimeter sweep coordinates. Everything's clear." He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes, but he also didn't push it. Not yet. We spent the rest of the day going through the motions, maintaining equipment, running communication checks with McMurdo, guarding the prisoners, acting like everything was normal. But that night, after Rodriguez, Jenkins, and Carter had gone to sleep, the 4 of us met outside my tent. "There's a bunker about 15 miles southwest of here," I said quietly. "We passed it on day 2, but didn't fully investigate. According to the markings we saw, it was active until at least the mid-90s. If we leave now, we can search it and be back before dawn." It was risky. If Rodriguez woke up and found us gone, he'd know something was wrong, but we had to take the chance. We couldn't let this opportunity slip away. We loaded the snowcat as quietly as possible and drove out into the Antarctic night, using only minimal lights to avoid drawing attention. The darkness was absolute, the kind of darkness you never experience in civilization. Just us, the ice, and the stars above. Stars that, according to Martin's documents, might not be what we'd always believed they were either. But that was a rabbit hole for another time. Right now, we needed to focus on the bunker. We reached it around 2300 hours. From the outside, it looked exactly as I remembered, half buried in ice and snow, the entrance partially blocked, but accessible. We forced our way inside, our flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing a space frozen in time. The bunker was larger than I'd initially thought, multiple rooms branching off a central corridor, sleeping quarters, a communications room, a galley, and most importantly, an office. The office was where we focused our search. Metal filing cabinets lined one wall, most of them frozen shut. Webb used a crowbar to force them open, the sound of breaking ice echoing through the empty bunker like gunshots. Inside the first cabinet, we found exactly what we were hoping for: files. Dozens of them. Patrol logs, incident reports, classified memoranda, all dating from the late 1980s through the mid-1990s. I pulled out a folder at random and opened it. The label read, "Civilian Incursion Report, March 1989. Inside was a detailed account of how a team of 4 explorers had attempted to reach the barrier, how they'd been intercepted by military personnel, how they'd resisted detention, and how, ultimately, they'd been neutralized to protect operational security. Neutralized. The military euphemism for killed. These people had been murdered for trying to see the barrier. and it had all been documented in cold, bureaucratic language. Jesus Christ, Chen whispered, reading over my shoulder. They killed them. They actually killed civilians, and just filed a report about it like it was routine. Thompson was going through another cabinet. There are dozens of these reports. 1987, 1988, 1990, 1992. All the same story. Civilians get close, military intercepts them, and they either get detained and disappear into the system or they get neutralized. This has been going on for decades. Webb found something even more disturbing. A folder marked Historical Context, Operation High Jump. Inside were photocopied documents from 1947, including what appeared to be personal diary entries and official reports from a massive military expedition to Antarctica, led by Admiral Richard Byrd. I'd heard of Operation High Jump before. It was public knowledge, officially described as a military exercise to test equipment in polar conditions. But these documents told a different story. One diary entry, dated February 19, 1947, read, "We flew beyond the pole today. What we found there defies explanation. Beyond the ice barrier, there are lands, green lands with mountains and forests. I don't know how this is possible. I don't know what it means. The Admiral has ordered complete secrecy. We are not to speak of what we saw, not even among ourselves. But I had to write this down, had to record it somewhere. The world beyond the barrier is not what they told us to expect. It's not empty wasteland. It's something else entirely. Something that suggests our entire understanding of geography is wrong." I felt my hands shaking as I read. Operation High Jump, 1947. They'd known about the barrier, about what lay beyond it, for over 70 years, and they'd been covering it up ever since. Chen found another document in the same folder. A memorandum dated March 1947, marked Top Secret, Eyes Only. It was addressed to the Secretary of Defense and read, "Following the completion of Operation High Jump, it is recommended that all information regarding the Antarctic barrier and the lands beyond be classified at the highest level. Public knowledge of these discoveries would fundamentally undermine the accepted model of global geography and potentially destabilize international relations. A permanent monitoring presence should be established to prevent unauthorized exploration of the barrier region." Cover story. Antarctica is an inhospitable frozen continent with minimal strategic value. Reality. Antarctica is the perimeter of the known world, and control of this perimeter is essential to maintaining the current world order. Thompson had moved to another room and called out to us, "You need to see this." We found him in what looked like a personal quarters, holding a small leather-bound journal. This was hidden under a mattress, personal diary of someone who was stationed here. "Listen to this," he read aloud, his voice echoing in the frozen bunker. "January 15th, 1985. I've been here for 6 months now. 6 months of guarding this godforsaken barrier and lying to myself about what it means. Today I climbed to one of the observation posts on the ice ridge. From up there, on a clear day, you can see further. You can see the barrier extending beyond the horizon in both directions. Infinite, eternal. And beyond it, if you look carefully through high-powered binoculars, you can see something else. A dome. A transparent dome so vast it covers the entire sky. It refracts light in ways that shouldn't be possible. It bends the stars. And in that moment, I understood. We're not on a planet spinning through space. We're in a contained environment. A terrarium. A cage. Everything they taught us is a lie. The globe, the solar system, the universe. All of it constructed to hide the truth about where we really are. God forgive me. I wish I'd never seen it. I wish I could go back to believing the lie. Because now that I know the truth, I can never unknow it. And the weight of that knowledge is crushing me. The entry ended there. We found more entries, increasingly desperate, increasingly unhinged, as the writer grappled with the implications of what he'd discovered. The final entry, dated June 1985, was just 2 sentences. "I can't do this anymore. They can have their secret. I'm done." We searched the rest of the bunker but found no indication of what happened to that soldier. No record of transfer, no death certificate, nothing. He'd simply disappeared, like so many others who'd gotten too close to the truth. We loaded as many documents as we could carry into backpacks and bags, careful to take photos of everything we couldn't physically carry. We worked quickly, aware that every minute away from camp increased the risk of discovery. Rodriguez wasn't stupid. If he woke up and found us gone again, he'd know something was wrong. As we prepared to leave, I found one more document that made everything click into place. It was a training manual, dated 1959, titled Antarctic Perimeter Security Protocol. The manual was comprehensive, detailing everything from patrol routes to rules of engagement to protocols for handling civilians who got too close. But it was the introduction that stunned me. It read, "Following the signing of the Antarctic Treaty, all participating nations have agreed to maintain the official narrative that Antarctica is a continent located at the bottom of a spherical Earth. This narrative must be protected at all costs." The true nature of Antarctica, its function as a barrier encompassing the known world, must remain classified. Personnel assigned to perimeter security must understand that they are not simply guarding a geographic location. They are guarding the fundamental narrative of human reality. Failure to maintain this narrative could result in global social collapse, religious upheaval, and the breakdown of all existing power structures. The stakes could not be higher. Your mission is not just military, it is civilizational. I stood there in that frozen bunker, holding that manual, understanding for the first time the true scope of what we were dealing with. This wasn't just a conspiracy to hide an interesting geographic anomaly. This was a conspiracy to control human perception of reality itself. To maintain power structures built on a lie so fundamental that exposing it would indeed threaten every government, every institution, every belief system on Earth. We drove back to camp in silence, each of us processing what we'd found. The sun was just starting to rise as we pulled in, around 05:30 hours. We'd been gone for over 6 hours. Rodriguez was awake, standing outside his tent, arms crossed, glaring at us as we approached. "Where the hell were you?" he demanded. "And don't give me another bullshit story about patrol sweeps." I looked at Chen, Webb, and Thompson. We'd already discussed this possibility. It was time to decide. Bring Rodriguez into the truth, or continue lying and risk him reporting us. I made the decision. "Get Martin," I told Rodriguez, "and wake the others. Everyone needs to hear this, because what we found tonight changes everything, and you all deserve to know the truth before we decide what we do next." Rodriguez stared at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "This better be good, Sullivan, because right now, I'm about 2 seconds away from calling McMurdo and reporting that you've gone rogue." I met his eyes steadily. "After you hear what I have to say, after you see what we found, you're going to understand why we went rogue, and then you're going to have to make the same choice we did. Follow orders and protect the lie, or break ranks and expose the truth. There's no middle ground anymore. Not after what we've seen." And that's when I knew that our team was about to split, that some would choose duty over truth, and others would choose truth over duty, and that split would define everything that came next, everything that would cost some of us our lives, and all of us our freedom. If you're still watching, comment below right now, because this is it. This is the moment where we crossed from suspicion to certainty, from theory to proof. From soldiers following orders to men who'd seen something that would haunt us for the rest of our lives. What I'm about to describe, what we saw from the top of that barrier, it's the reason 2 of my team members are dead. It's the reason I'm in hiding. It's the reason they'll do anything to keep this video from spreading. So let people know. Share this, download it, repost it. Because once you hear what we saw from the top of that ice wall, you'll understand why they're so desperate to keep it hidden. After I told Rodriguez we needed to talk, after I said everyone needed to hear what we'd found, the camp exploded into chaos. Rodriguez wanted to call McMurdo immediately to report us for going AWOL and conduct unauthorized investigation. Jenkins and Carter were confused, caught between following protocol and their growing curiosity about what we'd discovered. And Martin, still zip-tied in the prisoner tent, was watching everything with that same calm expression, like he'd known this moment was coming. Like he'd been waiting for us to reach this breaking point. I gathered everyone in the main tent, including Martin and his 3 companions. I spread out the documents we'd taken from the bunker across a folding table. Patrol logs showing decades of civilian neutralizations, diary entries from soldiers who'd seen things they couldn't explain, memoranda establishing the conspiracy, and photos showing the barrier from various angles taken over the years. For 30 minutes, I laid it all out. Everything we'd found, everything we'd seen, the massive ice wall stretching infinitely in both directions. The surveillance grid designed to prevent civilians from getting close. The evidence that this cover-up had been operating since at least 1947. Rodriguez listened with his arms crossed, his face getting darker with each document I showed him. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "So what?" So there's a big ice wall in Antarctica. So the government has been keeping it classified. That doesn't prove the Earth is flat. That doesn't prove we're living in some kind of container. You're making massive leaps in logic based on incomplete information. Martin spoke up from where he sat, his hand still restrained. Then how do you explain the surveillance, the killings, the 70-year cover-up? If it's just an interesting geographic formation, why murder civilians who try to see it? Why threaten military personnel who ask questions? Why build an entire system of deception that involves every government on Earth? Rodriguez turned on him. Because people like you would turn it into exactly what you're turning it into. A conspiracy theory. A flat Earth fantasy. The government keeps it classified to prevent mass panic and misinformation, not because it proves anything about the shape of the planet. But Webb interrupted. I've been thinking about the navigation anomalies, the GPS glitches we experienced, the way our instruments went haywire the closer we got to the barrier. Standard Antarctic conditions don't explain that. But if there's some kind of electromagnetic field associated with the barrier, if it's generating energy or serving some kind of containment function, that would explain the instrument failures. Thompson added, and the temperature variations. We measured the barrier itself. It's warmer than the surrounding ice. It's generating heat. Natural ice formations don't do that. This thing is active. It's doing something. Chen looked at me. There's only one way to settle this. We climb it. We get to the top. We look over the other side. If it's just the Antarctic Ocean extending to the horizon like it should be on a globe, then Rodriguez is right, and we're chasing conspiracy theories. But if it's something else, if what Martin says is true, then we'll know. We'll have proof. Rodriguez shook his head violently. Absolutely not. We are not climbing that wall. We're bringing these prisoners back to base. We're reporting what we found, and we're letting command decide what to do with this information. That's how the chain of command works. I met his eyes. I'm going. Chen, Webb, and Thompson are going. You can come with us, or you can stay here with Jenkins and Carter and guard the prisoners. But I'm not walking away without seeing what's on the other side. I can't. Not after everything we've found. The tent was silent. Rodriguez stared at me, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. Duty versus curiosity. Orders versus truth. Finally, he said, if you do this, I'm reporting you the second we get back to McMurdo. All of you. This is insubordination. This is violation of direct orders. Your careers are over. I nodded. I know. But my career doesn't matter if everything I've built it on is a lie. We left camp at 0900 hours. 6 of us. Me, Chen, Webb, Thompson, Rodriguez, who changed his mind at the last second. And surprisingly, Martin. I'd cut his restraints, figuring that if we were going to see the truth, he deserved to be there. He'd risked his life to come out here. He'd earned it. The rest of Martin's team stayed behind with Jenkins and Carter guarding them, though at this point the idea of guarding felt absurd. We were all in this together now, prisoners and captors united by the need to know. The barrier was 6 miles from camp. We drove 4 miles in the snowcat, then continued on foot for the last 2. We needed to approach quietly, carefully, in case there were automated surveillance systems we hadn't detected. The barrier grew larger as we approached, more imposing, more impossible. Up close, it was even more disturbing than from a distance. The surface was too smooth, too perfect. Ice doesn't form like this naturally. Ice has texture, irregularity, the marks of wind and time and natural formation. This was smooth like manufactured glass, like it had been poured or grown or constructed by something with precision far beyond human capability. We found a section that looked climbable, a slight angle that wasn't quite vertical, with enough microtexture that our ice axes and crampons could get purchase. 2 hours to the top, Webb estimated, examining the route. Maybe less if conditions hold. We roped together in pairs, me with Chen, Webb with Thompson, Rodriguez with Martin. Standard climbing procedure, except nothing about this was standard. The climb was brutal, not just physically, though that was bad enough. The cold cut through every layer of clothing. The wind came in gusts that threatened to tear us off the wall. My arms were screaming after the first 30 minutes, my legs cramping, every breath burning in my lungs. But it was the psychological weight that was truly crushing. With every meter we climbed, I was more aware that we were doing something forbidden, something that people had been killed for attempting. That pilot we'd found, frozen in his plane, he'd tried to see what we were seeing. Those civilians in the incident reports, neutralized to protect operational security. They'd tried to reach where we were reaching. We were climbing toward a truth that powerful people had spent decades hiding. And there was no guarantee we'd survive what we found at the top. About halfway up, maybe 30 meters, Martin called out, "Captain Sullivan, look at the ice. Really look at it." I paused in my climb and examined the surface more closely. He was right. There was something strange about it. Patterns. Not just the micro-texture that gave us grip, but deeper patterns. Geometric, mathematical, like circuitry embedded in the ice itself. "It's not natural," Martin said. "I told you. This barrier wasn't formed by normal glaciation. It was built, or grown, or manifested. However it came to be, it was intentional. This is architecture, not geology." Webb, climbing nearby, added, "I'm seeing the same thing. These patterns, they're repeating at regular intervals, like a crystalline structure designed to serve a function. This thing is engineered." Rodriguez, breathing hard from the effort, growled, "Or it's just unusual ice formation and we're seeing patterns because we want to see them. Don't let confirmation bias cloud your judgment." After nearly 2 hours of climbing, we reached the top. I pulled myself over the edge and collapsed on my back, gasping, my body screaming in protest. One by one, the others joined me. We lay there for a few minutes, none of us speaking, all of us just trying to survive the next breath. Then Chen sat up. "Okay, we're here. Time to see what we came to see." I forced myself to stand, my legs shaking from exhaustion. First, I turned around and looked back the way we'd come, back toward Antarctica, back toward the world we knew. From 60 meters up, the view was incredible. I could see our snowcat in the distance, tiny against the vast white expanse. Beyond that, the black ice we'd traveled across. Further still, the normal Antarctic landscape stretching toward the horizon. Mountains in the distance, the curve of the coastline, everything exactly as it should be on a spherical Earth. Normal, comprehensible, safe. Then I turned around and looked over the other side, and everything I thought I knew about reality shattered in that instant. Because what I saw on the other side of the barrier wasn't what should have been there. It wasn't an ocean. It wasn't more ice. It wasn't the continuation of a spherical planet's geography. What I saw was impossible, incomprehensible. Proof that humanity had been living in a lie so massive that even seeing the truth with my own eyes, I struggled to accept it. There was no ocean extending infinitely toward a distant horizon. Instead, beyond the barrier, the ice dropped away sharply. A decline. A slope descending into what looked like emptiness, like we were standing at the edge of a bowl, looking down toward a center far below us. And in the distance, maybe 100 miles out, maybe more. It was hard to judge scale. I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. A distortion. A shimmer in the air like heat haze. Except we were in Antarctica, where heat haze doesn't exist. The light bent around this distortion in ways that violated physics. And as I stared at it, my mind struggling to process what my eyes were seeing, I realized what I was looking at. A dome. A transparent dome so massive it was hard to perceive its shape. But it was there, curving up from the horizon, arching over the sky above us, encompassing everything. The stars we saw at night, the sun that rose and set, all of it contained within this impossible structure. Webb spoke first, his voice barely a whisper. What is that?" Thompson had pulled out binoculars and was studying the distortion. "It's a dome. Has to be. The way the light refracts, the curvature visible at the edges. We're looking at the inside of a massive enclosed structure, but that's impossible. You can't build something that large. You couldn't. The engineering required." He trailed off, unable to complete the thought because the thought itself was too massive to grasp. Rodriguez stood beside me, his face pale, his confident skepticism completely gone. "No," he whispered. "No, this isn't real. This can't be real." But it was real. We were all seeing it. 6 men standing on top of an ice barrier at the edge of the known world, looking at proof that everything we'd been taught about our planet was wrong. Martin spoke quietly, without triumph or vindication, just sadness. "Now you understand. This is what they've been hiding. Not just that the Earth is flat, though it is. Not just that Antarctica is a barrier, though it is, but that we live inside something, a contained environment, a terrarium, a cage. We're not on a planet spinning through infinite space. We're inside a structure, and that structure has boundaries. This barrier is the outer wall. That dome is the ceiling. And everything we've been told about the cosmos, about our place in the universe, is a carefully constructed lie designed to hide the fact that we're contained, that we're limited, that we're being kept in. I felt my knees go weak. I actually stumbled and had to sit down on the ice before I fell. Chen sat beside me, his face in his hands. Webb and Thompson were still staring through binoculars at the dome, making small sounds of disbelief. Rodriguez had walked away, pacing back and forth, muttering to himself. We stayed up there for maybe 30 minutes, all of us processing what we were seeing in our own ways. We took photos, hundreds of them, from every angle, with every camera we had. We took video. We documented coordinates, measurements, everything we could think of. Because we knew that when we went back down, when we returned to civilization, nobody would believe us without evidence. Hell, I had evidence and I still barely believed it myself. Finally, I stood up. We need to go back. We need to get this information out. We need to tell people what we found. Martin looked at me with those sad, knowing eyes. They won't let you, Captain. You know that, don't you? The moment you try to reveal this, they'll stop you. They'll confiscate your evidence. They'll discredit you. If necessary, they'll kill you. This secret has been protected for at least 70 years, probably longer. They've built entire institutions around maintaining the lie. They're not going to let a few soldiers with cameras destroy all of that. I met his gaze. Then we make sure the evidence gets out before they can stop us. We hide copies. We send it to multiple sources. We do whatever we have to do to make sure the truth survives, even if we don't. Rodriguez spoke up, his voice hollow. Sullivan, if we go back and try to expose this, our lives are over. Not just our careers, our lives. They'll label us traitors, enemy combatants. They'll make us disappear. Is that really what you want? I thought about that pilot again, about his final journal entry, about how he died knowing the truth but unable to share it, about all the other people over the decades who'd seen what we were seeing and had been silenced. And I made my decision. I'd rather die telling the truth than live protecting a lie. We're going back. We're gathering all the evidence we found, and we're getting it to people who can spread it. Media, internet, everywhere. They can't silence everyone. Not if enough people know. We began the descent. None of us spoke. We were all too busy processing the impossible thing we'd witnessed. The thing that would change everything. The thing that would cost some of us our lives. The truth. If you're still watching this, if you've made it this far, then you need to hear what happened next. Because seeing the dome was just the beginning. What came after, what we discovered as we stood there trying to process the impossible, that's what really broke us. That's what made us understand just how deep the lie goes. Comment below right now. Tell me you're listening. Tell me you're ready to hear how everything you believe about reality is wrong. Because after this part, there's no going back. After this, you'll see the world differently forever, just like we do. We stood there on top of that barrier for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 or 30 minutes. None of us could speak. We just stared at that impossible dome curving across the sky, at the way the light refracted through it, at the way it made everything we'd been taught about astronomy and space and the cosmos into obvious lies. Chen was the first to break the silence. He turned to me, his face pale, his voice shaking. This can't be real, Sullivan. This violates everything we know about the planet, about physics, about everything. His hands were trembling as he pointed at the dome. If that's real, if we're really inside some kind of enclosed structure, then what the hell is the sun? What are the stars? What is the moon? Are they all just lights? Projections inside this thing? Thompson had his binoculars pressed to his face, studying the dome's structure. It's not uniform, he said, his voice clinical, falling back on scientific observation to cope with the impossible. The dome has variations, different densities or layers, and there are lights embedded in it. Small ones, thousands of them. Jesus Christ, are those the stars? Are the stars we see at night just lights built into the ceiling of this container? Webb grabbed the binoculars from him, looked for himself, then lowered them slowly. His face had gone from pale to gray. The constellations, the way they move across the sky in predictable patterns, the way they've remained constant throughout human history. If this is a dome, if we're in an enclosed space, then the stars aren't distant suns billions of miles away. They're just lights, fixtures in the ceiling, moving on tracks or rotating on a mechanism. He turned to look at me, and I saw something break behind his eyes. Everything we learned about astronomy is fake. The solar system, the galaxy, the universe, all of it constructed fiction to hide the fact that we're in a snow globe. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that there had to be another explanation. But I couldn't, because I was looking at the same thing he was. I was seeing the same impossible structure, and every attempt my brain made to rationalize it, to fit it into the worldview I'd always had, failed. There was no rationalization. There was only the truth, standing before us like a monument to humanity's greatest deception. Rodriguez had been quiet since we'd reached the top, just staring at the dome with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Horror, mixed with betrayal, mixed with something deeper, the collapse of identity. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was barely above a whisper. My entire life is a lie. Everything I believed in, every mission I flew, every operation I completed. I thought I was serving my country, protecting freedom, defending truth. But I was just another guard in the prison, just another cog in the machine designed to keep humanity ignorant. He pulled out his personal camera, a small digital device he'd brought against regulations, and started filming. Not just the dome, but everything. The barrier behind us, the decline beyond the barrier, the strange geography that didn't match any model of a spherical Earth. He narrated as he filmed, his voice getting stronger. My name is Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps. Today is December 12th, 2019. I'm standing on top of the Antarctic barrier, approximately 60 meters above sea level. Behind me is the Antarctic continent as we know it. In front of me is proof that everything humanity has been taught about the Earth is wrong. We are not on a sphere. We are inside a contained environment. This is not conspiracy theory. This is not speculation. This is direct observation of physical reality. And I'm recording this because someone needs to know. Someone needs to see what we're seeing before they silence us. I pulled out my own phone and started taking photographs. High resolution, multiple angles. I documented the GPS coordinates, though I knew they'd probably be scrubbed from any official record. I photographed the barrier itself, the strange patterns in the ice, the way it stretched infinitely in both directions. And I photographed the dome, that impossible structure that proved we'd been living in a lie our entire lives. Martin stood beside me, calm as always, watching us document everything. You understand now, he said quietly. This is why they kill, to protect the secret. Not because the truth is dangerous in itself, but because of what it implies. If we're in a contained environment, then someone or something created that environment. If the Earth is flat and enclosed by a dome, then we're not an accident of evolution on a random rock floating through space. We're deliberate, designed, placed here for a reason. And that raises questions that no government wants its citizens asking. Chen looked at him. What questions? Martin gestured at the dome. Who built this? Why? Are we in a prison or a preserve? Are we being protected from something outside, or is something being protected from us? If this is artificial, where are the builders? Are they still here? Are they watching us? And most terrifying of all, if this is a container, what happens if we try to leave? What happens if humanity collectively decides they want out? The implications hung in the frozen air between us. If Martin was right, and I was increasingly certain he was, then we weren't just uncovering a geographic deception. We were uncovering the fundamental truth about human existence, about our place in whatever reality actually was. Webb had been studying the geography below the barrier, the way the ice sloped downward into what should have been ocean. Look at the topology, he said, the way it all slopes inward toward a center point. If Antarctica is a ring around the known continents, and if it all slopes down from this barrier toward the middle, then the Earth is literally a flat plane contained within circular walls. The oceans don't fall off the edge because the edge is higher than the center. Gravity, or whatever force keeps us adhered to the surface, pulls everything toward the middle. That's why we never notice the flatness. That's why ships can sail in circles and think they're going around a globe. They're just traveling within the circle, never reaching the walls. Thompson added, and if there's a dome above us, creating atmospheric pressure and containing everything, that explains why we can't actually leave the planet. Not really. Every rocket launch, every space mission, it all stays within the dome. The space stations are probably just floating within the upper atmosphere of this enclosed system. The moon landings, the Mars rovers, all CGI and models. Because you can't leave. There's nowhere to go. The dome is the limit. Rodriguez stopped filming and looked at us. So, the space race was fake? The Cold War competition to reach the moon was just theater? Both sides pretending to achieve something impossible to maintain the illusion? I thought about all the footage I'd seen. The grainy videos of moon landings, the images from Mars, the photographs of Earth from space. that perfect blue marble floating in darkness. All of it crafted, all of it constructed to support the lie. Think about NASA's budget, I said, the pieces clicking into place. Billions of dollars every year. Where does it actually go if they're not really launching rockets into space? If they're just sending up equipment that operates within the dome, or faking missions entirely? What are they spending the money on? Martin answered. Maintaining the infrastructure of the lie, paying off thousands of employees to keep the secret, funding the black operations that guard this barrier, developing technology to make the fake footage more convincing, and most importantly, identifying and neutralizing anyone who gets close to the truth. This conspiracy isn't cheap. It requires massive resources, massive coordination, and massive ruthlessness. But it's worth it to them because the alternative, letting humanity know the truth, would end their control, would end their power, would end everything they've built. Chen was pacing now, his mind working through the implications. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959 by 12 countries, now signed by over 50. It prohibits military activity, mineral mining, and nuclear testing in Antarctica. But most importantly, it restricts civilian access. You can't just go to Antarctica. You need permits, government approval, coordination with approved tour operators who only take you to specific monitored locations. Why? Officially to protect the environment. But really, it's to keep people away from the barrier, to make sure nobody gets close enough to see what we're seeing right now. He stopped pacing and looked at Martin. You said governments have been guarding this since 1959. But the treaty was signed in 1959. That's not a coincidence. Martin nodded. The treaty was the formalization of something that had been happening informally since the 1940s. After World War II, when the major powers explored Antarctica more thoroughly, they discovered the truth, the barrier, the dome, the real shape of the world, and they made a collective decision. This information is too dangerous to be public knowledge. It would destabilize everything. Religion, science, government, economics, all of it based on the heliocentric model, on the idea of humanity as insignificant specks in an infinite universe. But if we're not insignificant, if we're central, if we're contained and designed, then all the power structures collapse. Who's really in charge? Who knows the full truth? What else have they lied about? I thought about my entire military career, every mission, every operation, every order I'd followed without question. Had any of it been real? Or was it all just part of the system designed to maintain control, to keep people distracted, to prevent them from asking the questions that would lead them here, to this barrier, to this truth? Rodriguez had started filming again, this time pointing the camera at himself. If anyone is watching this, if this footage somehow survives what I know is coming, you need to understand what this means. It means every institution you trust is complicit in the biggest lie in human history. Your government, your schools, your scientists, your religious leaders. All of them either know the truth and are actively hiding it, or they're useful idiots repeating lies they've never questioned. Either way, you can't trust them. You can't trust anyone who has a stake in maintaining the current system. Thompson interrupted. We need to focus on getting this evidence out. We've documented what we've seen. We have photos, video, GPS data, everything. But none of it matters if we can't disseminate it before they confiscate it. The second we get back to McMurdo, they're going to know something is wrong. They monitor everything, every communication, every data transfer. We need a plan to get this information to the outside world before they can stop us. I'd been thinking about the same thing. We hide the data. Multiple copies, multiple locations. We encrypt it and send it to people outside the military. Journalists, researchers, internet forums, everywhere. We flood the zone with so much evidence from so many sources that they can't suppress it all. Martin looked skeptical. They've been suppressing evidence for 70 years, Captain. They're very good at it. Witnesses disappear. Footage gets debunked as CGI. Documents are dismissed as forgeries. You're underestimating how sophisticated the machine is that maintains this lie. I met his eyes. Then some of us need to survive to keep pushing the truth. Some of us need to stay alive long enough to make sure this evidence spreads. We can't all be silenced if we're smart about it. But even as I said it, I knew the truth. Martin knew it too. I could see it in his eyes. We were already dead. The moment we'd climbed this barrier, the moment we'd seen the dome, we'd sealed our fate. The only question was whether our deaths would mean anything. Whether the evidence would survive, even if we didn't. If you're still watching, comment below immediately, because this is where they found us. This is where the mission went from investigation to survival. This is where we discovered that we'd never been alone, that they'd been watching us the entire time, waiting to see how far we'd go before they had to intervene. And what we saw in those final minutes on top of that barrier, before the helicopters came, that's the evidence that proves beyond any doubt that we're living inside something constructed, something designed, something that makes the globe Earth model not just wrong, but laughably, obviously wrong once you see the truth. So comment, share this, download it, because in a few minutes I'm going to tell you about the moment they came for us, and you need to know what we saw before they tried to erase it. We'd been on top of the barrier for maybe 40 minutes, documenting everything, processing the impossible, when Webb suddenly grabbed my arm. "Sullivan, look at the dome. Really, look at it. The lights are moving." I raised my binoculars and focused on the section of dome he was pointing at. He was right. The small points of light embedded in the dome's surface, the ones we'd realized were the stars we saw at night, they weren't stationary. They were moving, slowly, deliberately, following paths that seemed programmed, like they were on tracks or being controlled by some mechanism. Thompson was watching the same thing through his own binoculars. Those aren't stars. Stars don't move like that. Natural celestial bodies follow predictable patterns based on rotation and orbit. But these lights are moving independently of each other, following curved paths that don't match any astronomical model. His voice was shaking. They're artificial, completely artificial. The night sky we see, the constellations we've mapped and named and navigated by for thousands of years, they're just a light show, a projection or a mechanism built into the dome to make us think we're on a spinning planet looking out at the cosmos. Chen had pulled out a military-grade telescope from his pack, something he'd grabbed from our equipment for precisely this kind of observation. He set it up and focused on a different section of the dome. I can see the structure now. Layers. The dome isn't one solid piece. It's multiple layers, maybe dozens, each one slightly different in transparency or composition. And between the layers, there are cables, or something like cables, connecting points, carrying energy or data or something. This isn't just a passive container. This is active technology. The dome is doing something, performing some function beyond just enclosing us. Rodriguez moved to the telescope, looked for himself, then backed away like he'd been hit. No, this is too much. If the dome is technology, if it's artificial, then who built it? Humans, ancient civilizations, aliens, God, and why? What is the purpose of enclosing humanity in a container and lying to them about it for their entire existence? Martin spoke up, his voice calm despite the insanity of what we were discussing. Biblical texts call it the firmament. Genesis describes God creating a dome to separate the waters above from the waters below. Ancient cultures across the world have stories about the sky being a solid structure, about the stars being lights attached to it. We dismissed these as primitive mythology, as pre-scientific misunderstanding. But what if they were right? What if ancient people actually knew the truth about the world and it's only modern humanity that's been deceived? Webb interrupted, pointing beyond the barrier to the declining geography below. Look down there, at the ice formations near the base of the barrier. Tell me I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing. I turned my binoculars downward, scanning the area just beyond where the barrier met the ground level. At first I saw only ice and rock, but then I noticed what Webb had spotted. Structures, not natural formations. Manufactured structures, partially buried in ice and snow but clearly artificial. Metal structures. I could see the geometric precision, the right angles, the deliberate construction. What the hell are those? I muttered. Chen adjusted his telescope to focus on the structures. They look like rails, train tracks, but massive. Each rail must be 3 or 4 feet wide, and they extend from the base of the barrier downward, following the slope, like some kind of transportation system. Thompson added, "And there, see that? That looks like a gateway, or a lock mechanism, like a massive door built into the barrier itself." He was right. Among the structures, there was what appeared to be a large gate, maybe 100 feet tall, made of the same dark metal as the rails. It was closed, or at least it appeared to be, partially obscured by accumulated ice. "Someone built infrastructure here," I said, my mind reeling. Not just the barrier itself, but support systems, transportation, access points. This isn't a natural formation that humanity discovered and decided to hide. This is an engineered construct that's been here. How long? Centuries? Millennia? Since the beginning? Martin nodded slowly. And maintained. Those structures look old, but not degraded. In Antarctic conditions, unprotected metal would corrode and collapse within decades, but these look functional, which means either they're made of materials that don't degrade, or someone is maintaining them. Someone with access to this area. Someone with the authority and ability to operate beyond the barrier without public knowledge. Rodriguez had stopped filming and was just staring at the gates and rails. You're telling me there's a hidden infrastructure, possibly with active maintenance, operating at the edge of the known world, and the entire global population is unaware of it? How many people would have to be involved in something like that? How many people would have to keep that secret? I thought about the bunkers we'd found, the decades of patrol logs, the surveillance systems, the incident reports. Thousands, I said. Maybe tens of thousands over the decades. Military personnel on rotation, scientists with compartmentalized knowledge, government officials with high-level clearances, all of them seeing pieces of the truth, but never the whole picture. All of them kept in line by threats, by money, by ideology, or by the simple fact that no one would believe them if they talked. Chen was still studying the dome through the telescope. There's more. I can see what looks like vents or ports in the dome structure. Large circular openings, maybe 50 feet in diameter. They're closed now, but they look like they could open, like airlocks or pressure release valves. What would they be for? Thompson considered. If we're in an enclosed environment, atmospheric pressure would need to be regulated. Maybe those ports allow for exchange of gases or adjustment of internal pressure. Or maybe they're access points, ways to enter or exit the dome from outside. The implications were staggering. If there were access points in the dome, that meant there was an outside, a space beyond the container we lived in. And if there was an outside, then what was out there? What existed beyond the firmament? More importantly, who had access to those ports? Who could open them? We were so focused on studying the dome and the structures that we almost didn't hear it at first. A distant sound, growing louder. A mechanical thrumming that I'd heard thousands of times in my military career. Helicopters. Multiple helicopters. Approaching fast. Webb heard it too. We've got incoming. Multiple aircraft. Bearing northeast, maybe 5 miles out. My blood turned to ice. Not from the cold, but from the realization of what this meant. They know we're here. They've been tracking us. Rodriguez checked his radio, which we'd kept on standby but silent. We haven't transmitted anything. How could they know our location? Martin's expression was grim. GPS, your equipment. They've been monitoring you since McMurdo, probably before. They knew the moment you deviated from your patrol route. They knew when you visited the old bunkers. They certainly knew when you approached the barrier. They've just been waiting to see what you'd do, how far you'd go. And now that you've climbed the barrier, now that you've seen what you weren't supposed to see, they're coming to clean up the mess. I grabbed my radio and switched it on. Immediately, it crackled to life with a voice I'd never heard before. Not Commander Pierce, not anyone from McMurdo. A different voice, cold, authoritative, absolutely devoid of emotion. Captain Sullivan, this is Control. Identify your position immediately. I didn't respond. What was the point? They knew exactly where we were. The voice continued. Captain Sullivan, you and your team have violated multiple security protocols and accessed restricted areas without authorization. You are to descend from the barrier immediately and await extraction. Any attempt to flee or resist will be met with appropriate force. Chen looked at me. Appropriate force. That's military speak for we will kill you if necessary. Thompson was packing up the telescope, moving with trained efficiency despite the fear on his face. We need to move. Now. If they're 5 miles out, we have maybe 3 or 4 minutes before they're on top of us. But where could we go? We were on top of a 60-meter ice wall with nowhere to hide and no way to descend quickly enough to evade helicopters. We were trapped. The voice on the radio spoke again, and this time there was an edge to it, a threat barely concealed beneath the professional tone. Captain Sullivan, this is your final warning. Descend the barrier now. This is a direct order. Failure to comply will result in your designation as hostile combatants engaged in treason against the United States. You know what that means. Your families will be informed that you died in an accident during a training exercise. There will be no bodies returned, no investigation, no questions asked. You will simply cease to exist. Is that really how you want this to end? Rodriguez looked at me with desperation in his eyes. Sullivan, what do we do? We can't fight helicopters with small arms. We can't outrun them. We're completely exposed up here. I thought fast, my training kicking in despite the impossibility of the situation. We don't run. We don't fight. We document. We get as much footage and data as we can in the next 2 minutes. Then we encrypt it and attempt to transmit it. Even if they capture us, even if they confiscate our equipment, if we can get the data out to external servers, to cloud storage, to anywhere outside their control, then our deaths won't be meaningless. Webb was already pulling out a satellite phone, one of the encrypted models we'd been issued. I can try to upload to a civilian cloud service. It'll take at least a minute, maybe 2, and they'll detect the transmission immediately, but it might work. Martin grabbed my arm. Captain, before they get here, you need to understand something. You need to know what you're really up against. This isn't just about hiding the flat Earth. It's about maintaining control over humanity's perception of reality itself. The people coming for you, they're not evil. They genuinely believe they're protecting civilization from a truth that would destroy it. They've convinced themselves that the lie is necessary, that humanity isn't ready for the truth, and maybe they're right. Maybe if everyone knew we were in a container, knew that the stars were fake, knew that we couldn't leave, society would collapse. Or maybe humanity is stronger than they think. Maybe we deserve the truth, even if it's terrifying. But that's not your decision anymore. You've seen what you've seen. You know what you know. And now you have to decide whether you're going to go quietly and spend the rest of your life in some black site prison, or whether you're going to make sure this information gets out, even if it costs you everything. I looked at my team, at Chen, who'd followed me into this nightmare without hesitation, at Webb and Thompson, who'd trusted my judgment even when it led them into treason, at Rodriguez, who'd overcome his skepticism to stand with us at the edge of reality, and at Martin, the civilian who'd risked everything to expose the truth and had been proven right in the most terrible way possible. The helicopters were visible now, 3 of them, black, unmarked, approaching fast. We had maybe 90 seconds before they arrived. I made my decision. Webb, start the upload. Everything, every photo, every video, every document we've collected. Send it to every cloud service you can think of. Thompson, keep filming. Document the helicopters, document what happens when they arrive. Rodriguez, Martin, help me secure the physical evidence. Hide memory cards, distribute them among us so they can't confiscate everything at once. We moved with military efficiency, even though we all knew it was probably futile. The helicopters would have equipment to jam our transmissions. They'd search us thoroughly. They'd confiscate everything. But maybe, just maybe, we'd get something through. Maybe one video would upload. Maybe one photo would make it to a server they couldn't access. Maybe someone, somewhere, would see what we'd seen and know that we were telling the truth. The radio crackled again. Captain Sullivan, we are 60 seconds from your position. Stand down and prepare for extraction. This is your final warning. I picked up the radio and for the first time since this nightmare began, I responded. This is Captain Derek Sullivan. We have documented evidence of the Antarctic barrier, the dome structure, and the artificial infrastructure at the edge of the known world. We have proof that humanity has been lied to about the fundamental nature of reality. We are transmitting this information now. You can capture us. You can kill us. But you can't stop the truth from getting out. Not anymore. There was a long pause. Then the voice responded. And for the first time, I heard emotion in it. Anger. You have no idea what you've done, Captain. No idea the forces you've just set in motion. We'll see you in 90 seconds. The helicopters were almost on us. Their roar filled the air, drowning out everything else. And I knew, standing there on top of that impossible barrier, looking at the dome that enclosed our world, that my life as I knew it was over. But maybe, just maybe, the truth would survive, even if we didn't. If you're still watching this, comment right now. Share this video. Download it. Mirror it everywhere you can, because this is where they took us. This is where we disappeared into the system that makes people vanish when they see too much. And if you're hearing this story, it means I survived long enough to tell it, but others didn't. 2 of my team are dead. Officially, they died in training accidents. Officially, none of what I'm about to tell you ever happened. So make sure people know. Make sure they can't erase this. The helicopters were maybe 30 seconds out when our radio exploded with Jenkins' voice, panicked and desperate in a way I'd never heard from him before. Sullivan, do you copy? They're here. They're at the camp. 3 helicopters just landed and they're not ours. These aren't Navy birds, they're unmarked, Black Ops, and they've got your people. Carter and I tried to stop them, but they just pushed us aside like we were civilians. Where are you? You need to get back here now. But we couldn't get back there. We were 60 meters up on top of an ice barrier with 3 more helicopters closing in on our position from the opposite direction. We were trapped between 2 forces, both of them probably authorized to kill us if we didn't cooperate. Thompson grabbed my arm, his voice tight with fear. "They've got Martin's team. They've got our base camp. We're completely cut off." Webb's satellite phone beeped. He looked at the screen and his face went pale. "Upload failed. They jammed the transmission. Nothing got through." All that evidence, all those photos and videos documenting the barrier, the dome, the infrastructure, all of it still locked in our devices, about to be confiscated and erased. Rodriguez was already moving toward the edge we'd climbed up, preparing to descend. We go down, now. If we're fast enough, maybe we can reach the snowcat before they lock down the entire area. It was a desperate plan, but it was all we had. We couldn't fight 3 helicopters with small arms. We couldn't hide on top of a barrier with no cover. Our only option was to try to outrun them, to get to our vehicle and drive like hell toward where? Back to McMurdo, where we'd be arrested immediately. Into the Antarctic wilderness where we'd freeze to death in days? There were no good options, but staying on top of the barrier was certain capture, so we moved. We started descending as fast as we could, using the ropes we'd secured on the way up, practically rappelling down the face of the barrier. Too fast, dangerously fast. But the alternative was worse. The helicopters reached our position just as we were about halfway down. They didn't land on top of the barrier. They couldn't. No stable landing zone up there. Instead, they hovered, and I saw figures in the open doors. Men in tactical gear, but not military uniforms. Black combat outfits with no insignia, no unit patches, no identification at all. And they were armed, heavily armed. One of them raised what looked like a bullhorn, and a voice boomed out over the rotor noise. "Stop your descent immediately and remain in place. Any attempt to flee will be considered hostile action and will be met with lethal force. This is your only warning." Chen looked at me, his eyes asking the question, do we stop or do we keep going? I made the decision that probably saved our lives but ended our freedom. We stop. We can't outrun them, and if they shoot us off this wall, we die, and the evidence dies with us. Maybe if we cooperate, we get a chance to survive, to find another way to get the truth out. Rodriguez cursed, but stopped his descent. We all did, hanging there on the face of the barrier like insects pinned to a board, completely vulnerable, completely at their mercy. The helicopters repositioned, and I got a better look at them. Rodriguez had been right. These weren't standard military aircraft. They were newer, more advanced, with technology I didn't recognize. Stealth modifications, sophisticated communications arrays. These were black budget birds, the kind used for operations that officially never happened. We finished the descent slowly, under the watchful eyes of the men in the helicopters. When we reached the bottom, we found ourselves surrounded. More men in black tactical gear had been dropped by the helicopters while we were climbing down. At least a dozen of them, forming a perimeter around us, weapons trained but not aimed directly at us. Yet, one man stepped forward, clearly the leader. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in command. But he wasn't wearing any rank insignia, nothing to identify who he was or what authority he represented. He looked at each of us, his expression unreadable, then spoke in that same cold voice I'd heard on the radio. "Gentlemen, I need you to place your weapons on the ground slowly and step away from them. Then remove all electronic devices, phones, cameras, radios, GPS units, everything. Place them in a pile. Do not attempt to delete data or hide any devices. We have sensors that will detect them, and if you're found to be concealing evidence, the situation will become significantly more unpleasant for you." We complied. What choice did we have? I placed my sidearm on the ice, then my phone, my camera, my GPS unit, watched as the pile grew with contributions from Chen, Webb, Thompson, Rodriguez, and Martin. Everything, all our evidence, all our documentation, all of it about to be confiscated and destroyed. The gray-haired man gestured to his team, and 2 of them moved forward to collect the devices, placing them in hardened cases that looked designed to block any transmission or data transfer. Then he turned his attention back to us. "My name is not important. My organization is not important. What's important is that you've all committed serious violations of security protocols and accessed classified information without proper authorization. You're going to be transported to a secure facility where you'll be debriefed and your status will be determined." Chen spoke up, his voice defiant. "Debriefed? Is that what you call it when you disappear people who've seen too much? We know what happened to the others. The civilians who got close to the barrier, the pilots who flew where they weren't supposed to, they were neutralized. Is that what's going to happen to us? The gray-haired man's expression didn't change. Your fate depends entirely on your level of cooperation and your willingness to sign the appropriate non-disclosure agreements. Some of you may be offered the opportunity to continue your careers under enhanced oversight. Others may require more comprehensive containment. It's too early to determine which category you fall into. More comprehensive containment. Military euphemism for imprisonment or worse. Rodriguez stepped forward, anger overriding his fear. We're American soldiers. We have rights. You can't just disappear us without due process. The man smiled, and it was the coldest smile I'd ever seen. You ceased to be soldiers the moment you violated your security clearances and accessed restricted areas. You're now classified as security risks, and security risks have very different rights than soldiers. Or rather, they have no rights at all. Jenkins and Carter were brought over from our camp, looking shell-shocked. They were unharmed, but clearly terrified. Jenkins caught my eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry," though I wasn't sure what he was apologizing for. For not stopping this? For not warning us sooner? None of it was his fault. We'd made our choices. We'd climbed that barrier knowing the consequences. Martin and his 3 companions were also brought forward, their restraints removed, but now under the same guard we were. Martin looked at me with that same sad, knowing expression. "I told you they'd come. I told you they'd make us disappear. But you had to see for yourself. You had to know the truth, even if it destroyed you." The gray-haired man overheard this and turned to Martin with something like recognition. "Mr. Kessler, we've been tracking your activities for quite some time. 3 years of planning this expedition, recruiting a team, gathering resources, all under our observation. We let you get this far because we wanted to see who you'd infect with your theories. Who else believed the flat earth nonsense badly enough to risk their lives? Now we know, and now we can clean up the entire network." Martin smiled, a genuine smile this time. "You didn't stop us. We saw it. We documented it. And even if you confiscate our devices, even if you lock us away forever, others know. Others have the information. The truth is spreading and you can't stop it." The gray-haired man's expression hardened. "We'll see about that." We were separated immediately. No explanations. No chance to talk to each other. Chen was taken to one helicopter, Webb and Thompson to another. Rodriguez, Martin, and I were loaded into the third. But before we took off, the gray-haired man approached my helicopter and leaned in close enough that only I could hear him over the rotor noise. "Captain Sullivan, you had a promising career. You were identified early as a potential candidate for higher clearance, for entry into the real decision-making structure. But you threw it all away because you couldn't follow orders, because you needed to know. Well, now you know, and that knowledge is going to haunt you for whatever remains of your life. You saw the barrier. You saw the dome. You understand now that everything you were taught is a lie, and you're going to spend years, maybe decades, locked in a room thinking about that truth, knowing it, unable to share it, unable to do anything with it. That's your punishment. Not death, not torture. Just the crushing weight of knowing something that humanity isn't supposed to know, and being powerless to share it." Then he stepped back, and someone pulled a black hood over my head. The world went dark. I felt the helicopter lift off, felt the movement as we flew for what seemed like hours. I tried to keep track of time, of direction, anything that might tell me where they were taking us. But disoriented and blind, I lost all sense of it. Could have been 2 hours, could have been 6. Eventually, we landed. I was pulled from the helicopter, still hooded, and led through what felt like a series of corridors, metal floors. The echo suggested interior spaces, a facility of some kind. Underground, maybe, based on the temperature drop and the absence of wind. Finally, the hood was removed. I found myself in a small, windowless room, concrete walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, a camera in the corner, its red light indicating it was recording. This was an interrogation room. I'd been in dozens of them over my career, but always on the other side of the table. Always as the interrogator, not the subject. Now I understood how it felt to be completely powerless, completely at the mercy of a system that operated outside any rules or oversight. The door opened, and the gray-haired man entered, carrying a folder. He sat down across from me and opened it. "Captain Derek Sullivan, 12 years of exemplary service, multiple commendations, spotless record until approximately 1 week ago, when you began making unauthorized decisions and conducting illegal investigations. The question is, why? What made you throw away everything you'd built? What made you risk your career, your freedom, possibly your life, for a conspiracy theory? I met his eyes without flinching, because it's not a conspiracy theory. It's the truth. I saw it. We all saw it. The barrier is real. The dome is real. The flat earth is real. And you know it. You've always known it. You're just one of the people tasked with making sure nobody else finds out. He smiled again, that same cold smile. You're right. I do know it. I've known it for 23 years, since I was first read into the program. And in those 23 years, I've helped contain dozens of incidents just like this one. Civilians who got too close, military personnel who asked too many questions, scientists who noticed inconsistencies, all of them neutralized or contained, all of them forgotten. And you're going to be just another file in my drawer, another person who learned the truth and disappeared. He leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen, Captain. You're going to sign a non-disclosure agreement. You're going to agree to never speak about what you saw, not to anyone, not ever. In exchange, you'll be released from military service with an honorable discharge and a generous pension. You'll be monitored for the rest of your life. If you ever violate the NDA, if you ever try to share what you know, you and everyone you care about will disappear. It's a simple choice. Stay silent and live a comfortable, if watched, life. Or speak out and cease to exist. What's it going to be? I thought about the frozen pilot, about his journal, about how he died knowing the truth but unable to share it. I thought about Martin, who'd spent 3 years planning an expedition just to prove what he already knew. I thought about Chen, Webb, Thompson, Rodriguez, all of them now in rooms just like this one, being asked the same question. And I thought about humanity, living its entire existence inside a lie, never knowing that the world they thought they understood was completely different from reality. I looked the gray-haired man in the eyes and said, I'll sign your agreement. I'll stay silent. I'll take your money and live under your surveillance. But you need to know something. You can't stop the truth forever. Sooner or later, enough people are going to see what we saw. Enough people are going to ask the questions you can't answer. And when that happens, when the lie finally collapses, everything you've built to maintain it is going to collapse too. You're not protecting humanity from a dangerous truth. You're protecting a system of control that's built on deception. And that system is already cracking. We're just one crack among many. He closed the folder. Maybe you're right, Captain. Maybe the lie will collapse someday, but not today, and not because of you. If you're still here, if you've made it this far, then you need to hear this next part carefully, because this is where they broke me. This is where they showed me exactly what happens to people who see too much and refuse to stay quiet. This is where I learned that the conspiracy to hide the flat earth isn't just about keeping a geographic secret. It's about maintaining absolute control through fear, through surveillance, through the systematic elimination of anyone who threatens the narrative. Comment below if you're listening. Let me know you heard this. Because what I'm about to describe is how they keep thousands of people silent about the greatest lie in human history. After that initial interrogation with the gray-haired man, I was taken to a cell. Not a prison cell, not officially. There were no bars, no guards visible. Just a small room with a bed, a toilet, and walls that felt too thick, too soundproof. The door locked from the outside with mechanisms I couldn't see or hear. No windows, no clock. No way to tell time except by the meals they delivered through a slot in the door twice a day. I was in there for 96 hours, 4 days, but it felt like weeks. Isolation does something to your mind. Without external stimuli, without human contact, without any sense of time passing, your brain starts to turn on itself. You think about everything. You replay every decision. You question your own memories. By the 3rd day, I was starting to wonder if what I'd seen on top of that barrier was real or if I'd hallucinated it, if the stress and the cold had broken something in my brain. That's when they started the real interrogation. Not the gray-haired man this time, but others. Always 2 of them. Never the same pair twice. Always in black suits, no identification, no names. They'd ask me the same questions over and over. What did you see on the barrier? Who did you tell? What evidence did you collect? Where did you hide copies of the data? I told them the truth. I'd seen the dome. I'd seen the structures. I'd documented everything, but all the devices had been confiscated. I hadn't hidden any copies because we hadn't had time. They didn't believe me. They assumed I must have backed up the data somewhere, must have sent copies to someone outside the military, must have insurance in case they tried to silence me. So they kept asking, kept pressing, kept implying that if I didn't cooperate fully, things would get much worse. On the fourth day, they changed tactics. A different pair of interrogators entered the room, and this time they brought a laptop. They set it on the table between us and opened it. On the screen were photographs of my apartment in San Diego, of my parents' house in Ohio, of my sister's home in Colorado. Current photographs, recent, taken within the last few days. One of the interrogators, a woman in her 40s with cold eyes, spoke in a flat, emotionless tone. "Captain Sullivan, you need to understand the scope of our organization. We have resources you can't imagine. We have reach into every level of government, every intelligence agency, every law enforcement organization. If we decide someone is a threat, we can access every aspect of their life. Family, friends, financial records, medical history, everything." She clicked to the next image. It was my mother, walking out of a grocery store. The photo was time-stamped 2 days ago. "Your mother, Linda Sullivan, age 62, retired school teacher, lives alone since your father passed 3 years ago. She goes to the same grocery store every Tuesday and Friday. She volunteers at the local library on Wednesdays. She takes the same route for her evening walk every day at 6 p.m. It would be very easy for something to happen to her. A mugging gone wrong, a car accident, a home invasion. These things happen all the time, especially to elderly people living alone." I felt rage building inside me, but I forced it down. Showing emotion would give them leverage. "You're threatening my mother because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see? That's how you operate?" The male interrogator, younger, maybe 35, answered. "We're not threatening anyone, Captain. We're simply making you aware of vulnerabilities. Your mother is vulnerable. Your sister is vulnerable. Her 2 children, ages 7 and 9, are extremely vulnerable. Schools have so many security gaps. It's remarkable, really, how easy it would be for someone to simply walk in and..." I cut him off. "I get it. I understand. You can hurt the people I care about. What do you want from me?" The woman closed the laptop. "We want your complete cooperation. We want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement that legally binds you to silence about everything you saw in Antarctica. And we want you to understand that violating this agreement in any way, at any time, for any reason, will result in consequences that extend beyond just you." They produced the NDA then. It was unlike any document I'd ever seen. 30 pages of dense legal language, but the core was simple. I agreed that I had never been to the Antarctic barrier, had never seen any structure or dome, had never participated in any expedition to restricted areas, and would never speak about or document any aspect of the mission for the rest of my natural life. Violation would result in immediate revocation of all military benefits, criminal prosecution for treason, and unspecified additional consequences. There was a classification level stamped on every page: cosmic, above top secret. I'd never even heard of a cosmic classification. "What is cosmic?" I asked. The male interrogator smiled. "It's a classification level that doesn't officially exist. Information at this level is known to perhaps a few hundred people in the entire world. Presidents don't have cosmic clearance. Most intelligence directors don't have it. It's reserved for information so sensitive that its disclosure would fundamentally threaten the stability of human civilization. Information like the true shape of the Earth, the existence of the barrier, the dome, the infrastructure beyond the ice. You've now seen cosmic-level information without clearance. That makes you either an asset or a threat. Signing this document determines which category you fall into." I picked up the pen they'd placed on the table. "And if I refuse to sign?" the woman answered. "Then you'll be classified as a permanent security risk. You'll be transferred to a black site facility where you'll spend the rest of your life in isolation. No trial, no legal representation, no contact with the outside world. You'll simply vanish, and your family will be told you died in a training accident. Is that preferable to signing a piece of paper and going home?" I thought about refusing, about taking the principled stand, about choosing imprisonment over complicity. But then I thought about my mother, about my sister and her kids, about how easily these people could hurt them just to make a point. I thought about Martin and his calm acceptance that this was always how it would end. And I thought about the gray-haired man's words. "You're going to spend years knowing something that humanity isn't supposed to know, and being powerless to share it. That's your punishment." He was right. Signing the NDA wouldn't protect the secret. It would just protect the people I cared about while I lived with the crushing weight of the truth locked inside me. I signed every page, initialed every clause, accepted every restriction, and with each signature, I felt a piece of myself die. When I finished, the woman took the document and smiled for the first time. "Good choice, Captain. Now let me show you what happens to people who make the wrong choice." She reopened the laptop and pulled up a video file. It showed a man in his 50s, military bearing, sitting in what looked like a coffee shop. The timestamp read, March 2017. "This is Colonel James Whitmore," she said. "He was part of an Antarctic expedition in 2015. He saw what you saw. He signed an NDA just like you did. But 2 years later, he started having second thoughts, started feeling guilty about keeping the secret. He reached out to a journalist, tried to arrange a meeting to share what he knew. The video showed the colonel standing up, walking toward the exit of the coffee shop. Then suddenly, he clutched his chest, collapsed. People rushed to help him, but he was clearly in distress. The video ended. "Heart attack," the male interrogator said. "Fatal. He was 53 years old. Perfect health. No family history of cardiac issues. Just dropped dead in a coffee shop 30 minutes before his scheduled meeting with the journalist. Tragic accident." They showed me another video. A woman this time, early 40s, scientist based on her appearance in a laboratory setting. Dr. Rachel Chen, geophysicist, part of a research team that discovered anomalies in Antarctic mapping data in 2018. She was read into the program, signed the NDA, seemed stable. But she made the mistake of keeping a personal journal, writing down her thoughts about the truth, about how she couldn't live with the lie. The video showed the woman in a parking garage walking to her car. A vehicle came around the corner too fast, struck her, and drove off. The woman was thrown several feet and lay motionless. "Hit and run," the woman interrogator said. Driver was never found. Dr. Chen died 3 hours later from her injuries. Another tragic accident. They showed me 6 more videos. 6 more people who'd seen the truth, signed NDAs, then tried to expose the secret or simply couldn't live with the burden of knowing. All dead within 2 years. Car accidents, heart attacks, suicides, home invasions. One man fell from his apartment balcony. One woman drowned in her own swimming pool. All ruled accidental deaths or suicides. None investigated as murders because there was never any evidence linking the deaths to their knowledge of the Antarctic secret. The pattern was clear. They were showing me my future if I violated the NDA. I'd be monitored constantly. Any attempt to share the truth would be detected immediately, and I'd have an accident before I could spread the information to anyone who mattered. The system was designed to be perfect. You could survive if you stayed silent, but speak out, and you'd be eliminated with such plausibility that no one would ever suspect murder. The male interrogator closed the laptop. "You'll be released tomorrow, Captain. Honorably discharged from military service with full benefits and a generous pension that will ensure you never need to work again if you choose not to. But understand that the pension comes with strings. It's funded through channels that give us complete visibility into your finances. If you try to donate large sums to activist groups or journalism organizations, we'll know. If you try to fund your own investigation or documentary, we'll know. The money is yours as long as you use it quietly and don't threaten the security of the program." The woman added, "You'll also be under surveillance, not obvious surveillance. You won't see agents following you or cars parked outside your home. But we'll be there, monitoring your phone calls, reading your emails, tracking your location, watching who you associate with. If you attempt to contact any journalists, researchers, or activists known to question official narratives about Antarctica or the shape of the Earth, we'll intervene before you can share anything of substance. You're free to live your life, Captain, but you're never truly alone. We're always watching." They left me alone then for another 12 hours. Time to think about what I'd seen, what I'd agreed to, what my life would be from that moment forward. I'd seen the edge of the world. I'd seen the dome that enclosed humanity. I'd seen proof that everything we'd been taught was a lie. And now I was being released back into society with that knowledge locked inside me, unable to share it, unable to do anything with it except live with the crushing weight of it every single day. When they finally released me, it was unceremonious. I was given civilian clothes, driven in a windowless van to what turned out to be a commercial airport, handed a ticket for a flight back to San Diego. No goodbye, no final warnings, just a simple statement from the driver. "Remember your agreement, Captain Sullivan. We'll be watching." I flew home and found my apartment exactly as I'd left it, except it felt different, violated. I knew they'd been through it, probably installed surveillance equipment, certainly documented everything I owned. My phone, my laptop, my mail, All of it compromised, all of it monitored. I was free, but I was also imprisoned. Imprisoned in a surveillance state designed specifically for me and the few dozen other people who knew the truth and had to stay silent about it. The pension arrived in my account the next week, $200,000 as a lump sum, plus monthly payments that would continue for the rest of my life. Blood money, payment for my silence, payment for my complicity in the greatest lie ever told. I tried to live normally. I got a job working security for a private company, something to fill my days and give me purpose. I dated. I visited my mother and my sister, always aware that by being around them, I was potentially putting them in danger. I went through the motions of a normal life, while inside, I was screaming, because I knew the truth. I knew that humanity lived inside a container, that the stars were lights on a dome, that Antarctica was a barrier, not a continent, that space exploration was a lie, that everything we'd been taught about our place in the cosmos was carefully constructed fiction, and I couldn't tell anyone, couldn't warn them, couldn't expose the deception, because the moment I tried, I'd have an accident, and the truth would die with me just like it had died with all those others whose videos I'd seen. For 3 years, I stayed silent. I honored the NDA. I took the blood money, and I kept my mouth shut. But then Chen died. Then Rodriguez died. Both within 6 months of each other. Both ruled accidental deaths. Chen fell while rock climbing, a hobby he'd taken up after his discharge. Rodriguez had a car accident, lost control on a wet road and crashed into a barrier. And I realized that even staying silent wasn't enough. They were eliminating us anyway, slowly, carefully, making it look like accidents, but removing everyone who'd seen the truth from the equation. I'm probably next, which is why I'm recording this now, why I'm violating the NDA that's kept me alive for 3 years, because silence didn't save Chen, silence didn't save Rodriguez, and silence won't save me. But maybe, just maybe, getting the truth out there, spreading it to enough people, will make it harder for them to suppress. Maybe if enough people know, they can't kill us all. That's my hope anyway. That's why I'm telling you this story. Comment below, share this video, download it and repost it everywhere, because they're coming for me. And when they do, this might be the only evidence that survives that humanity has been living in a lie, that the earth is flat, that we're enclosed in a dome, and that powerful people will kill to keep you from knowing it. If you've made it this far, if you've listened to all 11 parts before this one, then you deserve to hear the complete truth. Not just what I saw in Antarctica, but what I've learned in the 3 years since, what I know now that I didn't know then, and why I'm certain that telling you this story is signing my own death warrant. But I don't care anymore. I can't care, because staying silent means they win, means humanity continues living in the most elaborate lie ever constructed, and I'd rather die telling the truth than live one more day protecting their deception. So this is it. This is my final testimony. My last chance to tell you what they don't want you to know. Comment below right now. Not later. Right now. Because there's a very real chance this video won't be here tomorrow. There's a very real chance I won't be here tomorrow. And I need to know that someone, somewhere, heard what I'm about to say before they erase it. Before they erase me. Let me start with what happened to my team. The men I went to Antarctica with. The men who saw what I saw and knew what I know. In the 3 years since we were released, since we signed those NDAs and took their blood money, 6 of the 8 military personnel on that expedition are dead. 6. In 3 years. All ruled accidental deaths or suicides. All conveniently eliminating people who'd seen the barrier, who'd seen the dome, who knew the truth about the shape of our world. Lieutenant Marcus Chen died first, 18 months ago. He'd taken up rock climbing after his discharge, trying to find some way to feel alive again after seeing something that shattered his understanding of reality. He fell during a solo climb in Joshua Tree National Park. They said his equipment failed. A carabiner snapped. He fell 90 feet onto rocks and died instantly. But here's what they didn't report. Chen was an expert climber. He'd been climbing for 15 years. He checked his equipment obsessively. The idea that he'd use faulty gear, that he wouldn't notice a compromised carabiner, is absurd. But that's the official story. Equipment failure, tragic accident, case closed. Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez died 6 months after Chen. He was driving home from his security job when his car left the road at high speed and crashed into a concrete barrier. They ruled it suicide, said he'd been depressed. Said he'd left a note talking about demons that haunted him, about things he'd seen that he couldn't forget. His family disputes this. Rodriguez had no history of depression. He'd been in therapy after Antarctica, sure, but he was getting better. He'd started dating someone. He was making plans for the future. And the suicide note? His sister swears it wasn't his handwriting. But the police closed the investigation. Suicide. Another tragedy. Another person who knew too much. Gone.
Chief Petty Officer James Webb died 3 months ago. Heart attack. He was 36 years old. 36. Perfectly healthy. Marathon runner. Clean diet. No family history of cardiac issue. He dropped dead while jogging through his neighborhood. Just collapsed and died before the paramedics could arrive. The autopsy found nothing unusual. Just a spontaneous cardiac event in a man whose heart was strong enough to run for another 50.
But these things happen, right? Healthy young people sometimes just die. That's what they want you to believe. Petty Officer Thompson, our medic, died 2 months ago. Home invasion. Someone broke into his apartment in the middle of the night, killed him, and left without taking anything. No robbery, no obvious motive. Just a brutal murder that the police can't explain and don't seem particularly interested in solving. Jenkins died last month. Drug overdose. Heroin. Except Jenkins never used drugs. Not in the military. Not after his discharge. Not ever. But they found him in his apartment with a needle in his arm and enough heroin in his system to kill 3 men. His family is demanding an investigation, but they're getting nowhere. The official story is already written. Another veteran who couldn't cope with civilian life. Another tragic statistic. Carter is missing. He disappeared 2 weeks ago. Just stopped showing up to work, stopped answering his phone, stopped contacting his family. The police filed a missing persons report, but they're not actively searching. They assume he walked away, started a new life somewhere. But I know better. Carter didn't walk away. They took him, just like they're going to take me. That leaves 2 of us. Me and Martin Kessler, the civilian who started all of this. Martin went underground after his release, changed his identity, moves constantly. We communicate rarely and only through encrypted channels that probably aren't as secure as we hope. Last I heard from him, 3 days ago, he said they'd found one of his safe houses. He barely escaped. He doesn't know how much longer he can stay ahead of them, which means soon I'll be the only one left. The last person from that expedition still alive and free, and they can't allow that. They can't allow anyone who's seen the barrier and the dome to survive indefinitely. The risk is too great, so I know my time is limited. Days, maybe weeks if I'm lucky, but not months. Never months. That's why I'm recording this. That's why I'm violating the NDA that's kept me alive for 3 years. Because silence didn't save Chen. Silence didn't save Rodriguez or Webb or Thompson or Jenkins. Silence didn't prevent Carter from disappearing, and silence won't save me. But maybe, just maybe, getting this information out to enough people will make it harder for them to suppress the truth. Maybe if thousands of people hear this story, if hundreds of thousands share it, they can't kill everyone who knows. That's my hope. That's my last act of defiance against the machine that's been hunting us since we climbed that barrier. Now let me show you what I managed to hide. What I managed to keep despite all their surveillance and all their searches. I'm going to hold up to the camera several items. Film them if you can. Screenshot them. Download this video and archive these images. Because once they realize I still have these, they'll move to confiscate them. And me. First, coordinates. I memorized the exact GPS location of the section of the Antarctic barrier we climbed. The official coordinates that placed us somehow south of the South Pole, in a region that shouldn't exist on a spherical Earth. I'm showing you these numbers now. Write them down. Verify them against any map or GPS system you have access to. You'll find they're impossible. They put us in a location that doesn't exist in the official model of Antarctic geography, because that model is wrong. The model is a lie designed to hide the truth about the barrier. Second, I managed to hide one memory card. Just one. When they confiscated all our equipment, I had palmed a micro SD card from my camera and hidden it in a place they didn't search. I won't tell you where because I'm sure they're listening to this, but I got it out. And on that card are 23 photographs. Most are blurry because I took them quickly while we were on top of the barrier, while the helicopters were approaching. But some are clear enough. Clear enough to show the dome curving across the sky. Clear enough to show the strange light refraction that proves we're looking at a solid structure, not empty space. Clear enough to show the artificial nature of the barrier itself, the patterns in the ice that shouldn't exist if it were naturally formed. I'm going to flash these photos on screen now. Some are only going to be visible for a second or two, so if you're watching, record your screen. Capture these images. Spread them. Let experts analyze them. Let people see what I saw. Images show blurred but distinctive shots of ice wall with geometric patterns, distant horizon with visible light distortion, close-up of ice surface showing unnatural regularity, wide shot showing the curve of what appears to be a transparent structure against the sky. These are real. These are not manipulated. These are photographs taken with a military-grade camera in December 2019 from the top of the Antarctic barrier. And they prove that everything we've been told about Antarctica, about the shape of the Earth, about our place in the cosmos, is a carefully constructed lie. Third, I have a fragment of a document, just one page that I managed to tear from the files we found in that abandoned bunker. I've kept it hidden for 3 years, preserved in a waterproof case, moved between different storage locations to avoid detection. This document is dated 1961 and it's stamped Cosmic above Top Secret. It's a memorandum from a joint military committee to the Secretary of Defense, and it outlines the protocols for maintaining what they call the Antarctic containment. I'm going to read the key passage now, and I'm going to hold the document up to the camera so you can see it's real. The discovery of the Antarctic perimeter and the dome structure above necessitates a complete revision of public education regarding planetary geography. The heliocentric model must be maintained despite its inaccuracy to prevent mass social disruption. All personnel with knowledge of the true containment nature of our world must be sworn to permanent secrecy under penalty of death. The alternative, public awareness of our enclosed status, would lead to immediate questioning of governmental authority, religious upheaval, and potential civilizational collapse. The lie must be maintained at all costs. At all costs. That's what they decided in 1961. That humanity couldn't be trusted with the truth. That we needed to be kept ignorant about the fundamental nature of our reality. And for over 60 years, that's exactly what they've done. They've maintained the lie. At all costs. Including murder. Including the systematic elimination of anyone who threatens to expose it. This document proves it. This single page proves that the conspiracy is real, that it's been operating for decades, and that they will kill to protect it. So let me say this clearly, directly, so there's no ambiguity about what I'm telling you. Everything you've been taught about the Earth is wrong. We do not live on a spinning globe, hurtling through infinite space. We live on a flat plane, a contained environment, enclosed by a massive dome structure that our ancestors called the firmament. Antarctica is not a continent at the bottom of a sphere. It's a circular barrier, a wall of ice and rock that surrounds the known world and contains the oceans. The edge is real, the barrier is real, the dome is real, and they've been hiding it from humanity for at least 80 years, probably longer. The space race? Fake. The moon landings? Staged. The Mars rovers? CGI. The International Space Station, operating within the dome, in what we call the upper atmosphere, but never actually leaving the enclosed environment. Because you can't leave, there's nowhere to go. The dome is the ceiling, the barrier is the wall, and we're all living inside a container. NASA is not a space exploration agency. It's a propaganda agency. Its sole purpose is to maintain the illusion of space travel, to keep humanity believing in the globe model, to prevent people from asking the questions that would lead them to the truth. Billions of dollars in budget every year, not to explore space, but to create the fiction of space, to maintain the greatest lie ever told. The satellites you think are orbiting Earth, they're inside the dome, floating in the upper atmosphere. The GPS that guides your navigation, it works because of ground-based towers and atmospheric satellites within the containment, not because of objects orbiting a sphere. The weather satellites that predict storms, same thing, all operating within the enclosed system, all part of the infrastructure that maintains the lie. And why? Why maintain such an elaborate, expensive, murderous conspiracy? Control. It's always about control. Think about what the globe model does psychologically. It makes you feel small, insignificant, just one of billions of people on one of billions of planets in one of billions of galaxies in an infinite, random, meaningless universe. It makes you feel like nothing you do matters, like you're just a cosmic accident, a momentary spark in an endless void. That psychological programming makes you controllable, makes you compliant, makes you accept the authority of governments and institutions because what else is there? But if you know the truth, if you know you're not on a random rock in infinite space but in a contained, designed environment, then everything changes. Who designed it? Who controls it? Why are we here? What's outside the dome? What's beyond the barrier? Those questions threaten every power structure on Earth. They make people realize they've been lied to about literally everything. They make people question authority, and authority cannot survive that level of questioning. So they lie. They've been lying for decades. They've built entire institutions around maintaining the lie, and they kill anyone who threatens to expose it. That's what happened to my team. That's what's going to happen to me, and that's why you need to hear this. That's why you need to spread this. That's why this video, if it survives, needs to reach as many people as possible. Because they can kill me. They can erase this video. They can debunk the evidence and discredit my testimony. But they can't stop the truth if enough people know it. They can't kill everyone. So, here's what I'm asking you to do. If you've made it this far, if you've heard my story, I need you to act. Don't just watch and forget. Don't just think interesting theory and move on. This isn't theory. This is testimony from someone who was there, who saw it, who has the evidence, and who's about to die for it. First, download this video. Immediately, right now, before it gets taken down. Store it locally. Repost it to other platforms. Embed it in your website. Upload it to decentralized networks that they can't easily censor. Make copies. Lots of copies. Make it impossible for them to erase. Second, share it. Send it to everyone you know. Post it on social media. Email it to journalists, even though most of them won't touch it. Send it to scientists, researchers, anyone with the expertise to analyze the evidence. Send it to religious leaders who might see the connection to firmament theology. Send it everywhere. The more people who see this, the harder it is to suppress. Third, investigate for yourself. Look at the evidence. Research the Antarctic Treaty and ask yourself why civilian access is so restricted. Look at photos of Antarctica and notice the inconsistencies, the areas that are always blurred or obscured. Study the physics of the spinning globe model and ask yourself why you can't feel the motion, why water always finds its level, why the horizon always appears flat. Question everything you've been taught. Don't take my word for it. Don't take their word for it. Look at the evidence and decide for yourself. And finally, comment below. Leave a record that you heard this. Write down what you think. Even if you don't believe me, even if you think I'm crazy or lying or delusional, leave a comment. Because if this video disappears, if I disappear, those comments might be the only proof that this testimony existed, that someone tried to warn humanity about the lie they're living in. I don't know how much time I have left. Could be days, could be hours. There's a car that's been parked across from my apartment for the last 3 days. Different car than usual. New surveillance or something worse, I don't know. My phone has been acting strange. Apps opening by themselves. Battery draining faster than normal. They're either monitoring me more closely or preparing to make their move. Either way, I know the end is coming. I'm not afraid. I made peace with this outcome the moment I decided to record this series. What I am is angry. Angry that humanity has been deceived for so long. Angry that good people, people like Chen and Rodriguez and Webb, have been killed to protect that deception. Angry that billions of people go through their entire lives never knowing the truth about the world they live in. And I'm angry that I can't do more, can't provide more evidence, can't force people to see what I've seen. All I can do is tell the story and hope it reaches the right people, hope it reaches you. So this is it. This is my final message, my last testimony before they silence me, like they silenced the others. Remember this, the Earth is flat. Antarctica is the barrier that surrounds it. The dome is real. Space is a lie. NASA is propaganda. And everything you've been taught about our world is part of the greatest conspiracy in human history. A conspiracy so vast, so all-encompassing, that most people can't even conceive of it. But it's real. I saw it. I have evidence of it. And now you know about it. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Are you going to dismiss it, laugh it off as crazy conspiracy theory? Or are you going to question, investigate, demand answers? The choice is yours, but make it quickly, because time is running out. For me, for the truth, and possibly for all of us. If I disappear in the next few days, if this video gets deleted, if you never hear from me again, you'll know why. You'll know they got to me like they got to the others. And you'll know that everything I said was true, because they don't kill people for spreading lies. They kill people for spreading truths that threaten their power. This is Captain Derek Sullivan, formerly of the United States Navy, signing off. If you're hearing this, I'm probably already gone. But the truth isn't. The truth is still out there, written on the ice of Antarctica, visible in the dome above our heads, encoded in the documents they've tried to hide. The truth is that we've been living in a lie, and it's time for that lie to end. Comment below, share this video, download it, spread it, make them unable to silence everyone, because if enough of us know, if enough of us speak up, they can't stop us all. The barrier is real, the dome is real, the flat earth is real, and now you know. What you do with that knowledge is up to you, but whatever you do, do it fast, because they're coming for everyone who knows, and eventually, they'll come for you too, unless we stop them first, unless we expose the lie so completely that they can't maintain it anymore. That's my hope. That's why I'm telling you this, and that's why, even if they kill me tomorrow, this testimony will live on, in your memory, in your comments, in the copies you make and share. The truth can't be killed, only the messengers. And I was honored to be one of those messengers. See you on the other side, wherever that is.